Alrighty, hello, how's it going everyone? Thanks for tuning in. We're just going to be having a bit of a chat about the most recent Disney World kind of challenge that happened in Melbourne over the weekend. I was one of the attendees, a huge turnout there, had about 500 plus players, which was, I thought it was huge for a trading card game tournament in Australia. Obviously, I've come from Pokemon and we're sort of starting to hit some of those numbers now, but obviously, it's taken a little while. Pokemon's been around for ages, but Disney just being, a year or so old in the competitive scene and already hitting these numbers in what is a reasonably small country, comparatively to Europe and America or North America. It's pretty good having so many players come down. And I know a lot of them were internationals chasing that World's invite. But still great to see so many players coming down. A lot of people, it was their first big tournament, and everyone was super friendly. Everyone was sort of getting along. Obviously, there's a lot on the line, so it was good to see that everyone was still very collegial and getting along. And for the most part, I think everyone had really good experiences, which is great to see. So today we're just going to be looking through my tournament run and how I went. I was also on stream in round 4, so we're going to have a watch back of that as well and just sort of see what the casters and chat have to say. I am sure there are a plethora of misplays that I did, and I'm sure we can all learn a little bit from that as well. So I'm definitely going to be looking to see where I can improve as a player. And the person I played against, I believe it was Andy. He was a great guy. We had so much fun. He was a little nervous, as was I, but I think we both played pretty well. And so it'll be good to see. And yeah, just a fantastic day with a lot of the players. So then we're going to talk a little bit about the tournament and how it was sort of run. I think the tournament, for the amount of staff they had, which I didn't think was many staff, they really only sort of had like maybe 10, 15 sort of people running the side events and the tickets and the main event. And considering how many players there were and how many sort of judging staff, they did a fantastic job at making sure the event ran super smooth and everything sort of, ran as it should be, and managing to get a 9-round tournament done in, 10 hours or less is a pretty impressive feat, especially when you think about all the sort of setbacks that can happen with judge calls and time extensions. So on day 1, getting us out, pretty much before 8 was fantastic. It means we could get home and get a bit of a rest before day number 2, and having side events both days as well for those people that might have just been coming to attend and cheer on their friends, or people who weren't doing as well in the tournament had to, maybe drop as well. Having those options for them to keep playing and having fun was great as well. So we'll get a bit more into sort of the specifics of the tournament after we chat about my run and then watch the video, and then probably talk about, a few things that might have been improved. Obviously, this is all constructive criticism, and, it's the first tournament here in Australia, so it's quite a, first time. There's going to be a few sort of teething issues and stuff, and I think, a lot of these people are giving up their time to sort of help the event run, so, it's all just sort of in the name of improving the game for everyone and helping it to sort of be a better community for people who are coming to play the game. So let's jump into a bit about my tournament run. First, I'll bring up the deck here. So we see here, move my face out of the way there. So we see here, this is the deck that I played to the tournament. It is a Ruby Amethyst, as you can see. A little bit similar to Ed's list from the Continentals, just a few sort of minor changes here. Some of the similarities being that obviously got the 4-Lady Tremaine. Interesting choice here. Obviously, it is quite good against the Ruby Sapphire decks, but I think now that a lot of them are adding that Lucky Diamond, that matchup actually gets quite difficult, especially if they can find the Lucky Dime early on, meaning they sort of put you on a bit of a clock, and it can be hard if you haven't sort of gotten that explosive start with a lot of lore gain. So definitely a good card, mainly for that matchup, but I think with the Lucky Dime, it's probably getting a bit more unfavored. And if we see from the breakdown in the day 2, there were a lot of Ruby Sapphire decks. I think in top 32 there was 10, so basically 30%. So definitely a tough field there, and I think most of them would have been playing Lucky Dime, if not all of them. We can have a quick look at Ink decks a bit later and see what decks they've uploaded and have a quick look through those as well. Rest of the deck, pretty straightforward. You see that I cut a couple of the 1-drops for replace of the Mauis. Was expecting a fair bit of locations in the meta. Maui being able to rush in and take out a 7 Dwarfs Mine, help take out a library if you've got something, like a fox or a snake on the board already, or even in combination with a crab. And obviously the crab and the Maui can help take out the Muckduck Manor. If you're sort of at that 19, can be, or 18, can be a bit hard to sort of get up to that range, but normally if you've played a Be Prepared and they do the Muckduck Manor, you could just ink another card and then go Maui and then crab to take it out as well. So pretty good combo there, and you'll see that's why I sort of changed the library for the Merlin crab as well. I suspected there was going to be a few more hideaways, and not really the Cusco, but definitely the hideaway in the Ruby Sapphire decks. So obviously the library count's not going to be as impactful. And then obviously you've just got your Mana Mim bounce packages, or your Merlins, and then your Flynn Sisu package just to try and get that early tempo against the Ruby Sapphire decks. And then obviously the big shift Sisu being able to come out as early as turn 6 to help take out some of those aggro decks. And I did play against a few aggro decks, so don't think the Sisu came up in those matchups, but definitely in some other ones it did come in handy. So let's have a quick look at some of my matchups from the day one. So the first round I was playing against a Emerald Amber deck. It was sort of a more aggressive deck rather than that typical discard one we've seen. So that sort of entailed some of the Daisy Ducks, the Cursed Merfolks, the Lilo, Donald Duck to give the lore, those sorts of early, fast, aggressive questing characters. And then sort of trying to finish the game before I can sort of get to my big board clear cards like Be Prepared and the Sisu Empowered Sibling. So that was a bit of a scary matchup. I won the dice roll, so I was able to go on the play in game 1. That's sort of an interesting topic that I was sort of discussing with a lot of people throughout the day, that, whether you go first or second in a 2-game format, because obviously both players will get to go first and second in each game. So do you really want to go first? Do you want to go second? What's sort of the better, play here? And so it was interesting we having this discussion. I think my conclusion would say that it's probably better to go first, unless you know what your opponent's playing, in which case you sort of want to go first in the first one because you've already got that advantage of going first. So if you make a bit of a misstep on the mulligan, then you can, sort of use that advantage of going first to help you out. And all right, how's it going? Yeah, I've got the morning off work, so I'm actually streaming and getting a quick recap in. I know it's very early for a lot of people, and especially those who aren't in New South Wales and Victoria, so I appreciate anyone waking up early to watch with me. Maybe get a sneaky stream in before work as well. But so going first or second, I think, using that advantage when you might not necessarily get the most optimal mulligan because you don't know what you're playing against. But then, going second in the next one, you can sort of adapt and change your mulligan to sort of help mitigate that advantage that your opponent's getting by going first. So I think that's probably the best way. The only sort of exceptions are obviously if you know what your opponent's playing. And then I think aggro decks actually want to go second in the first game, because I think the deck is almost always going to be winning going first. And if you're not winning going first, then, why are you playing an aggro deck? It's going to be pretty difficult to win if you're not winning any games going first. So you want to sort of use that surprise advantage in game 1 where your opponent doesn't know what you're playing. So maybe they don't mulligan the right cards. So for example, when I was playing Ruby Amethyst, maybe I get rid of some of the Madam Mims and I try and keep like a Flynn Rider and Sisu instead. Then I might not have those rush cards to try and deal with the early aggressive questing. So I think, that way you can get a surprise advantage on your opponent and possibly win a game 2 when you wouldn't normally, and then win a game 1 going second, and then maybe in game 2 going first, you've got that advantage still because you're an aggro deck. The reason we sort of have this discussion because the tiebreaker system for Melee and for Disney Lorcana is that, obviously first one is how many times you went 2-0, obviously the points first gets your ranking, and then going 2-0, then how many points your opponents got out of how many they could have possibly got. So sort of like a percentage meta resistance ranking. And then the third tiebreaker is how many game twos you won. So sometimes your seeding can come down to how many of the game twos you've won. So in that case, you might want or be thinking about, maybe do I go first in the second game so I can win more of those game twos to help with my tiebreakers. But I think with a tournament sort of this size, where we've seen big American and European tournaments get up to 2,000 players, where it might be a bit more, close between the players, those tiebreakers can come into it. But I think with 500 players, whilst it's still being a lot, then the tiebreaker doesn't really matter as much. Just a little tangent there. So we'll get back into the tournament report. So I played the Emerald Amber deck round 1. They had some very aggressive starts. Fortunately, winning the die roll, I went first in the first one. Didn't really know what I was up against, but sort of just managed to get into some of those early foxes to help deal with those, the Daisy Duck, Donald's Date, the Cursed Merfolk, and the Lilos. And I think I had a last-minute change going up to 4 Magic Brooms rather than the 4 Diablos. So I think the Magic Brooms really put in a lot of work here, being able to take out first of all, a Lilo and not get banished back, take out a Cursed Merfolk. Chernobog can do that as well, but Diablo definitely can't, having that 0 strength. So being able to put that 1 damage on the Daisy Duck as well with the Magic Broom means that next turn you can go Madam Mim, bounce the broom, and then start hitting it for 3 to banish it the turn after. Not as important going first, but definitely going second. That can be a good play as well, but going first, just sort of getting that Madam Mim Fox down as early as possible, keeping it on the board and challenging. They actually had a really cool tech card in the Emerald Chromacron. So a card that says whenever one of your characters is banished, you can return a character to that player's hand. So it can be yours or your opponent's. So every time I would challenge and take out a character, they'd be able to bounce one of mine back. Unfortunately, with the Madam Mim Fox having Rush, I could just play it again as long as I had a low-cost character, like a 1-cost. So I could play that and bounce it and then challenge again. So fortunately, that Madam Mim would just come back every turn. But definitely in game 2, when I was going second, got a bit scary since my opponent did turn 1 Daisy Duck, then turn 2 Cursed Merfolk, and then turn 3 was another Daisy Duck and a Lilo. So me going second, I hadn't really had a chance to challenge down any of these characters. So I basically had a Flynn Rider and a Broom on the board, and they had 5 characters questing for 2. So it was looking pretty dicey in the first round there, but fortunately the Flynn Rider and the Broom were able to take out the Cursed Merfolks. Did have to discard a couple of cards, but then the Madam Mim Fox came in to challenge the Lilo, and then I sort of brought back that board presence a little bit. And once they sort of ran out of cards, I was able to just come in with the Lady Tremaines and the Brawls and keep the board clear so they couldn't quest anymore. And fortunately, they weren't playing the Amethyst version of the Amber aggro, so they couldn't, play the Merlin Scode or Bosses on a Roll or Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom. So fortunately, as long as I kept the board clear, then they couldn't really come back with the Lore Gain as well. So that was a quick 2-0. It was a nice playing against the aggro decks. Obviously, the game's finished really quickly, so you can just head on to grab a bit of a break, relax, look at some of the awesome vendors, which we'll get into once we talk a bit more about the event. And then on to round 2. So round 2, you get your first round out of the way, you win 2-0, you're feeling pretty good. So for a tournament this size, the cutoff ended up being 40 points. So obviously for a 2-0, you get 7 points. So really only needed, I think it was sort of 4 wins and the rest ties, and you'd be pretty locked with a reasonably good seed, which is what my record ended up being at 18th seed. So 3 more wins, and then I do the rest of you. And obviously, you want to play more and get that good seeding, but you'll take a day 2 in your first tournament for sure. So the next round, I played against Amethyst Amber, which again another aggro deck. This time they have a bit more of those burn cards, like the Goat and the Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom. So a little bit more scary. They don't have the Cursed Merfolk, which sort of challenges your hand. So that was, a bit of a relief, because you do sort of need your cards to keep bouncing your Madam Mims to challenge again. Fortunately, I won the die roll again. Been pretty fortunate with my die rolls throughout the tournament, so I was able to go first. Again, still not sure which one's correct, but I went with that one for the most of the day. And, the Madam Mim Foxes and the Mauis able to challenge and sort of keep that board under control. On top of that, having cards like Flynn Rider was actually really good for challenging the aggression of the deck. So you play the Flynn Rider, and these aggro decks don't really have a lot of high strength characters. I think really the highest strength is 2, probably, with that Donald Duck that is a bodyguard and gives +1 law to a character when you play it. So, and they can't get that out to turn 3. So if you go first and get a Flynn Rider down, you're getting 3 law every turn, and then you can get that Sisu down, and then maybe not so much the Sisu since they don't really have many cards in hand, but something like the Fox or the Goat, and keeping the board clear and keeping that high strength means that your Flynns can trigger every turn. So that was sort of helping me progress the game as well as keeping the board under control. Normally in these matchups you try and get the Sisu empowered sibling into play, but I didn't really sort of get to that. By turn 6, it's sort of getting pretty far into the game against these aggro decks. So I sort of just focused on the board presence and getting these Madam Foxes and Mauis and Crabs on the Diablo into play to try and keep the board clear. And they didn't play anything like the Amethyst Crom, which I think is really good in that deck, being able to keep drawing cards and replenishing your hand to play more threats, especially with the Amethyst cards that gain lore. But they weren't playing that, so they sort of just ran a bit out of steam. So the next round I play against a Steel Song deck. This was sort of a typical Steel Song, with the Long Came Zeus, Whole New World. I was a little bit scared about this matchup. I played a little bit beforehand with this deck against it, and it sort of felt like a pretty bad matchup. As long as they sort of get their singers on the board and start singing their songs to clear your board, they can put a lot of aggression on early before you can get to your Be Prepared turn. Because they do get a lot of sort of small characters down, like Cinderella, and then obviously you've got the Smee and Calhoun and Daisy Duck as well, that you can't just sort of Tremaine their board to clear it. So they can sort of get this aggressive start, but fortunately they weren't playing the Gaston, which can sort of make that matchup a bit more tricky, I think, because Gaston does have 3 strength rather than the 2 of aerial, so the Brawl isn't able to remove it. So anytime they'd come down with a Singer on 3, I would just be able to Brawl it. Obviously the issue there is that they can sometimes get the Robin Hood down with the shift, and then you don't really have a good way to remove the Robin Hood before they shift, and then they can start singing Whole New World, and you can get a little bit unlucky and have the Sisus and the Be Prepared and the Lady Tremaine, all these uninkable cards in your hand that you need in the late game to remove characters that can be discarded as well. So that can get quite tricky. And I think if they're able to get off a Whole New World and combine it with a Pete, you're looking like you're in a pretty difficult situation, which we'll see later in the stream game as well. A little spoiler there. So that can get a little bit tricky, but fortunately they didn't get the Robin Hood shift out. I can't remember if they played it or not. I don't think they did, maybe. But I was able to Brawl the aerials and sort of get a good board presence before they were able to sort of run away with it. So I did win the coin flip again. I went first in the first game. Going first, you've got a bit more liberty to play the Magic Brooms and the Chernobog's followers because they don't have the Cinderella down to sing any songs against it. But going second, you definitely need the Diablo down turn 1, which is why I was on 4, but I think last minute changed to the Magic Broom instead. I just think Magic Broom later in the game is a bit better for digging, as well as having that 2 willpower to sort of take out some aggressive questers. But yeah, so going first, get the Magic Broom down, followed by a Flynn Rider. And they sort of get that pressure on with the Calhoun Mini. You can't really quest, which makes it a bit difficult. And they sort of lock the board down a bit. I think as long as they don't have any singers on the board, though, you're happy just not questing for a little bit. Because I think the longer the game goes on without them getting singers down, the more favoured you are. So that was sort of game 1. And then game 2, I did find the Diablo on turn 1. So they were able to sing a song into it. But obviously I get a card draw off it as well. So the advantage sort of evens itself out. I just play a card, it gets banished, but I do just replace the card anyway, so it's sort of a net 0 from there. So I was able to get that game 2-0 again, so feeling pretty good now. It's 3-0, 21 points, just needing 19 more for the day 2 and the top cut. And then the next round, I'm at table 3 playing against Andy. We sort of set up and mulliganed already, ready to go. Not sure if you were meant to mulligan before the time was started, but I'd been doing it all day and no one had minded. So we just sort of had everything set up, ready to go and just sort of chatting. And then there wasn't anyone next to us. I imagine that would have been DKP, who was at, I believe he was on one of the other tables at the static seating, perhaps. So they were at table 2. And I think the guy came over to grab the place for the stream and went, oh, there's no one at table 2. I don't know where they are. So we're like, oh, we'll go and stream. And when I say we, it was mainly just me. I don't think Andy was super keen on it. But We offered, and he was pretty happy with it. So we sort of just grabbed our stuff and head over to the stream for round 4, and we'll watch that after the tournament recap. I've got it ready to go, so we'll have a bit of a look at that and see how many misplays I made. We should have a tracker or something, I reckon. So we played on stream. I won't go too much into it because we can watch the game afterwards, but we ended up winning 1 each. So another 3 points there. I did win the die roll again and went first. So I think that's 4 die rolls in a row. Again, incredibly lucky with the die rolls, but fortunately in a 2-game format doesn't really matter as much. Okay, so then we go on to round number 5. I was against Emerald Amethyst. So I hadn't really played against too much Emerald Amethyst prior to this, but afterwards chatting to my friend, he said, yeah, that's a horrible matchup that, you know, they're very favored for, and showed me all the stats, and yeah, it did look like a pretty bad matchup. So I went, won the die roll again, no surprises there, and I went first in game number 1. Sort of ran away with it a bit with the Flynn. They weren't able to get that Madam Mim down on turn 2. They just had to Ursula. They did hit a Be Prepared, which unfortunately I did have to mulligan into to try and find a 1-drop. But yeah, you know, every time they play a Genie down, I just Brawl it, which isn't great for card advantage. Obviously, the Genie replaces itself for them, and the Brawl just removes a character on board, and I don't get any cards off it. But you do have a lot of other card draw in terms of the Rabbit and the friends on the other side, so you're not too stuck for card draw throughout the game, as long as you can sort of keep the board under control and not let them get too high in the lore, because they do have the goats as well as the White Rose, so having those cards to gain the lore can be quite hard to deal with when they can just play to get the lore instantly and not have to quest, because this deck's pretty good at keeping the board clear, but not cards that get lore without needing to quest. So things like the Goat, White Rose, Lucky Dime even can be a bit difficult for this deck to deal with. But the library definitely came in clutch. They don't have too many ways to deal with it, mainly just the Crab, but having characters in there as well, questing for a lot, like the Sisu for 2, means they sort of need to deal with that quickly, and that just gives you more card draw as well. So able to win that game 1 as well. Then we go into game number 2. So I was going second in this one, and I think these were my worst draws of the day. I have 7 in my hand. There's a couple Tremaines, Be Prepared. I think those are friends. So all these sort of cards going second, especially, you probably want to mulligan away the songs specifically. You can sometimes keep the friends just to use as ink, but I think I'd rather just have it in the deck and then maybe draw into it later to sing with a rabbit or something like that. So, you know, and then things like a goat. Can't remember what other cards I had, maybe like a Brawl or a Library. Basically, no turn 1 play. And I did have a Snake, but I didn't have any turn 1 play, so I thought the Snake's probably not going to be that useful. So I mulliganed 7 cards, and somehow my next hand is arguably or worse than the first one. I think I had something like 2 Be Prepared, a couple of Brawls, no 1-drop, no 2-drop, and my only 3-drop was a Fox. So basically, I ink pass, and by this stage, my opponent's got like 2 Merfolk down and some other characters as well. So my turn 3 plays Brawl a Merfolk, turn 4 plays Brawl another Merfolk, and by this stage, I've got no board, and my opponent's just gone really wide, discarded to Be Prepared off the Ursula as well, that I mulliganed into, because obviously mulliganing 7, you're going to have that increased risk of drawing into your songs you don't want, and that sort of spelled disaster for me, and another tie. Not too unhappy with the ties, but there's a loss, and you do still get the 3 points, so that makes my score 302. So I was currently at 27 points, still just needing that 13 more. So basically, another 2-0 would guarantee me, you know, day 2 if I took a couple of IDs. So definitely still just looking for that other 2-0. The next round, I hit another Emerald Amethyst deck, so pretty similar to the first one. Fortunately, I did have a little bit better of a start going second, so I was able to sort of make a bit more of a game out of it. You know, things like that Flynn Rider can be quite good, because in order to contest it, they do need to play the Snake down, and then they bounce their Merfolk, so they're not questing for 2 again next turn. And you do sort of need that early game card advantage, so you can just keep inking cards, because you want to try and get to that 4, so once you get your rabbit down, then you can start drawing cards and, you know, replenishing your hand. But if you're in the early game and you start losing your hand to discard, it can get a little bit tricky if you run out of inkable cards. But, you know, I had things like Lady Tremaine and the Big Sisu, which you don't really want to discard, but you definitely need to keep your inkable cards around as well. And I think this was the first game that the Sisu actually came impactful because I was able to play it for 8 once they had sort of 4 characters down, including a couple of merfolk and a genie. So basically board clearing that was really impactful, and then getting this 3 lore quester that, you know, they need a fox to deal with, and they sort of run out of card draw a little bit. So that helped sort of shore up that game 1, where I went first because obviously I won the coin flip again. I promise I didn't stack any dice. I used my opponent's dice half the time as well. I just got incredibly lucky with all my coin flips winning. Yeah, I won all 7. And then I did the last 2. So definitely very lucky. And then game 2, they sort of went first, the merfolk into merfolk, and 1-drop Diablo sort of put on a lot of pressure. They were sort of already up to 7 by the time I can start challenging. And then they can sort of run away with it with the goats as well. After playing against the deck twice, it was really, really cool deck. I think I'll definitely be taking it to a set champs in the coming weekend as well. It was really cool to see how it worked and like just how aggressive it can be as well as some good tempo options. My only concern is just some of the removal options aren't great for you, so you have to wait for stuff to challenge as well. But you can put the aggression on yourself, so normally your opponent's going to have to be the one who's challenging you to start slowing you down a bit. So that was round number 6. I'm currently 303, still just looking for that one more 2-0. As long as I can sort of keep tying until, you know, I get that win, I'm okay, but I think a loss would be pretty bad right about now, an 0-2 loss. So go into round number 7 and lo and behold, win the coin flip again. But this time I choose to go second. My opponent really hadn't won many for the day and was sort of joking about it. It's like, oh, I think I've won every coin flip for the day. And they said, oh, so you'll let me go first? And I was like, sure, why not? You know, it's a 2-game format. It's not as big of a deal. So I let them go first in the first game. I thought, you know what, if I win this one, I'll feel pretty good and I can just win going first. And if I lose it, you know, I can sort of think, oh, that's a bit to be expected going second. So I played against another Emerald Amethyst deck here I was going second in the first game, and they sort of put on a bit of pressure with the merfolk, but I was able to get a sort of 1-drop down and a Flynn Rider to sort of contest the board a little bit and keep those questers under control. And then sort of once you get to that 6 ink in the late game, you can sort of keep it under control enough to win the game. You know, they don't have really any good removal, so as long as you're getting your characters out, and if you can find a Sisu Empowered Sibling, that basically clears the whole board for them. Like, really, they've got like a fox and a goat and a crab and things like that can stick around, but all their genies go, the rabbits go, the merfolk go, all their 1-drops go, Elsa goes. So a lot of those cards just get banished from the Sisu, and then you've got a big 5/4 body as well. So definitely a strong play there. So I was able to win game 1 going second, so I was feeling pretty good going into the next game. I was able to obviously win going first. It's a lot easier. You get the Flynn down. It's a bit harder for them to contest it early on if they don't have that snake and a 1-drop. And then you start sort of getting that aggressive lore game as well. So able to squeak out a 2-0 there. I think it came down to the wire in that first game though, 18-20. So getting a bit stressed about winning that one, but was able to win a 2-0 there and go to 403. So that is 37 match points. So my friend was telling me that 40 was basically locked, and, you know, 43 would put me at a pretty good seed. So feeling pretty good. I was discussing whether I should play it out or just ID with my opponent next round. You know, people were just saying, yeah, you know, you can ID and just get the guaranteed top cut, basically. Whereas if you try and play it out and you lose, then you've got to try and hope you can ID the next round and put you at a pretty average seed, you know. And even if you just get to go first once in top cut, that's still a pretty big advantage, being able to go first in top 64, hopefully get to that top 32 as well. You know, extra prizing is always nice, and that extra seed can definitely help as well. So I just decided that if my opponent offers the ID, I'll take it. And if they're wanting to play, then I'll just play it out with them. So we go into round number 8. I hit a player who afterwards I found out they were playing Ruby Sapphire. They said, do you want to play it out or ID? And I'm like, I'm happy. We can just ID if you want. I don't mind. And they said, yeah, sure, let's ID. So we took the ID. And obviously for the tiebreakers, you do need to decide who wins game 1, who wins game 2 randomly. So we did roll a die, and this is where my streak ends, and I'm losing all the die rolls that don't necessarily matter as much. So I lost this one and the next round. So I won game 1 and then lost game 2. So they get that sort of tiebreaker advantage. And I had a quick look at his deck afterwards because, top 64 is open deck list. So if we hit anyway, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And we'd just, be able to, look at each other's decks anyway. So we just decided to share and have a look. And they had some pretty cool tech includes. They had the Energy Blast card, I think it is, the 7-cost uninkable that banishes a character and draws a card. I thought that was really cool. It's basically just a Dragon Fiber. It draws you a card and replaces for some of your removal. And being able to get it back with Maui Half Shark and use it again, I feel like it's just a better Dragon Fire in that deck because you're always going to have that 7 ink basically because you ramp up so quick. So, having that as an option is pretty cool and just getting the extra draw cards. Because I think in the mirror match, you sort of want to make sure you're still having access to all of your removal options. So the Energy Blast means you can draw a card and replace it and hopefully draw into another removal. So definitely an interesting card to have as the inclusion there. And then obviously Hideaway, Lucky Dime, Vitalosphere as well. So we ID'd that one, got a bit of a break, currently at 40 match points. I think I was sort of sitting in the top 12th seed or something like that after this round. So looking like we'll get a pretty good seed, and everyone at the top tables was sort of, or most of the players at the top tables were sort of IDing around. So it was, you're not going to drop too far because everyone's sort of sticking around the same level. Just those people coming up from winning at the sort of lower points to jump above you, sort of how you get pushed down a little bit. So we go into round 9. Basically locked for top cut here, and my opponent offers the ID again. So I say, sure, let's ID, sounds good. It was actually Law Gains that I paired into round 9. So that was pretty cool. Guys come over from America, does some content as well. So yeah, check out his stuff. He seems like he's smashing it over there, and cool that we had so many internationals coming over to play as well. So got to see a bit of their play and show what the rest of the world can do, and sort of cool to compete against some of those high level players as well. So we ID'd that round, and basically it was like 7:30 by the end of the final round. So pretty quick day. We got out nice and early and then ready to come back the next day for an early start. So yeah, it was good. We did have to come back at 8 o'clock for the next round to sort of start for a 9:30. So a bit of an early start. So I'm glad we finished early to get that nice sleep in as well. Definitely an important part of tournaments. I think that people underestimate is actually getting a good night's sleep. Definitely helps you play, especially when you've played a grueling 9 rounds and possibly up to 6 more rounds the next day. So I ended up with 18th seed going into day 2, which I was pretty happy about. The deck I sort of picked up the night before, played it at a winner box, and it went pretty well. So I thought I'll just, run this one back and see how it goes. So managed to get the Let It Go promo. Everyone who got 40 points or more, so basically everyone who was 64th, and then I think 40 points went down to around 80, they were able to get the Let It Go promo. And I've actually got them quite here, so I'll show you quickly. This card here, it doesn't really do it justice to the camera, but it's such a nice looking card. I love the foiling pattern they've put on it. And a beautiful promo that they have done there. And then everyone got the Dragonfire as well for competing in the tournament. So it was nice that everyone sort of got something, and then a little bit more for those players that did a bit better as well. So then we go into day number 2. I am 18th seed, so I'll get to choose to go first twice. It was best of 3 70 minutes. So basically you're always going to get a winner out of here because it was single elimination. I was paired up against Nathan, I believe his name was. He was a super great guy. We were sort of waiting around for the deck list to get printed and stuff. So we were talking for a fair bit, and he was a nice guy. So having a fair bit of a chat there. We finally get to have a look at the deck list, and I see he's playing Ruby Sapphire. He's, pretty standard list. He's got a Hideaway, he's got a Lucky Dime. He's actually got a Vitalosphere as well, which is a little bit scary. Being able to rush the Maui Half Shark challenge, get an action back. And yeah, he otherwise was a pretty standard list. He was playing the Ice Blocks and the Sisu, the big Sisu, a couple of Be Prepared, things like that. I think the most scary part was the Lucky Dime coming down that I was a bit worried about. So I'm going first in game one. Definitely want to be looking for that Flynn Rider and Sisu combo, but unfortunately I did get a 1-drop, which was good, but I missed a 2-drop, and my 3-drop had to be a Madam M Fox to bounce back. So sort of not really putting on that pressure and just let him ramp up. And, you can sort of stay in the game and keep the board clear, but he did find that lucky dime pretty early on. I think by like turn 7 or 8, had that lucky dime in play. So he took a turn off to play the lucky dime. And, I can't really go too wide because of the threat of the B prepared. So I just had to try and keep drawing cards and get into my goats and bounce so I could start aggressing the board a bit more. But then he just started going wide on some of the items and playing these characters and using the lucky dime on them to get the lore, and sort of just ran away with it a bit there just because I wasn't able to put that pressure on with the Flynn Rider. So I lose game one. I go into game two a little bit disheartened, thinking, all right, now I've got to win on the play and on the draw. So I mulligan, try and find that Sisu. The brawl we're also sort of looking for as well to deal with the Flavishams and get that Sisu on turn 3 to pressure the strength so you can gain that lore of the Flynn Rider. Flynn Rider does trigger once for me in that game after I find him, and then I sort of just run away with it a bit after there. Once you start getting high on your lore, your opponent doesn't really have a chance to take a turn off to play the lucky dime. They sort of just have to keep answering your characters. So I was able to sort of get the rabbits down, sing some friends with them, get some goats, and sort of advance that lore total, and ended up being sort of 20-1, which is how that game can go sometimes when you get the Flynn Rider off. And then, so I win game 2, we're going into game 3. I'm finally on the draw, which is not where you want to be against Ruby Sapphire. That is for sure. So he goes about his 1-drop, gets the ramp, he's played Tipo on 2, and I'm sort of umming and ahhing whether I play this Flynn Rider here. So the Flynn Rider I can play, but he'll go to 4 ink next turn. So his options are you can either sail, ink, play the brawl to get rid of it, or even just Grammartala to sort of outstrength it, and then it doesn't really do too much. So I sort of think about it for a little while, and then I decide that Flynn Rider's probably not worth it, so I just ink him to play another couple of 1-drops and just try and get that heavier draw so I can make sure I get my answers to the board and maybe draw into some goats as well. So that's the difficulty with going second. You can't really rely on that Flynn Rider line. And he did play the Flavisham next turn, but I was chatting to him after the game. He did have the Grammatala as well, which he could have gone down that route if he needed to. And then the next turn, I think I brawl the Flavisham just to sort of keep that draw power under control. Because once Ruby Sapphire runs out of card draw, you sort of can get back into the game a bit. You definitely don't want them drawing into their dime early on. Unfortunately, did just have a bit too much card draw and did get that lucky dime down again by sort of turn 8, 9. And I think in total he had another, must have been 6 items, including the dime. So it was questing for a huge amount with Tamatoa. I think it was about 11 to 11 at that stage. I was sort of having a pretty wide board, like 4 or 5 characters. He, plays the Tamatoa, lucky dimes that gets 7 lore, uses the Vitalosphere to give it rush to take out my characters as well, which is a very good play. You don't mind challenging with the Tamatoa because most likely I'm going to have a Lady Tremaine to take it out anyway, so he can sort of keep my board under control. And I play the Tremaine so I can just quest with the rest of my characters and hope that he doesn't have a way to get, that final 4 lore. I think anything but a Tamatoa and I win the game, and he's got 2 cards in hand, so I'm thinking, maybe I've got a chance, but all these good players are definitely going to hold on to the cards they need to win the game. So he just plays the Tamatoa down and uses the lucky dime to get a huge 7 lore again, and that is the end of my top cut in Disney Lorcana Challenge in Melbourne. Probably couldn't have lost to a better guy, so I'm super happy for him and glad that another Aussie went to go on further into the tournament. Did miss out on the Cinderella foil promo, which looks so nice as well, so that was a little bit disappointing, but it was a great tournament and met lots of great people, so can't be too upset about that as well. So that was basically my run. Pretty happy with it. I think I could have, I think the deck performed as well as it could have. Maybe a few sort of misplays here and there that might have decreased my chances a little bit, but I think for the most part, I played it reasonably well considering I picked it up the night before. And yeah, the deck's still very strong, but I think now that a lot of the Ruby Sapphire lists are running a lucky dime or even 2, it's definitely going to get a bit more of a tricky matchup, at least until we get some sort of item removal in Ruby Amethyst, which, probably for the best that we don't. I think that would make the archetype a little bit too strong. So it's good that some decks have weaknesses that others can exploit. So, overall, 18C going into day 2 and, getting that Let It Go promo was very nice as well. So super happy with how the weekend played out. So as I was saying earlier, I was on stream for round number 4. So we'll watch it back and I'll have the casters on for the most part, and I'll just stop it in between and sort of discuss some of my players and what I was thinking. And we'll have a look at the Twitch chat as well and see what they were, commenting on the players. I heard they were a bit ruthless, which I'm happy to hear the feedback. As long as you're attacking my players and not me, that's fine. I'm always willing to learn and improve from them. So let me get up the stream. All right. So I think this is just before. Let me turn it down a bit.
Whichever Disney is your choice. You can build a deck.
All right. Let me know how the volume is. I hope that's all right. Let me see. Here we go. Yep. There's me on the right, and there's Andy. So Andy hadn't been on stream before. Andy hadn't been on stream before, so it was cool. He was a little bit nervous, but I was trying to I've only been on stream once, so not like I'm a professional at all. But it was cool that we both got to sort of go on, and I think the casters here are saying that we sort of know each other, and I guess we do for like the 5 minutes before we came on. But he was just a super friendly guy, and we're chatting about him. Don't want to reveal too much about him just in case he doesn't want me to. But yeah, he was a super nice guy. And we had a great couple of games on stream. So let's watch them.
What is that? I've never seen that. That doesn't exist. No. Okay, cool. All right, camera back onto us before we chop over to that. But yeah, no worries. So they seem to be chilling while they get the game started. And it looks like
we were chilling.
Darcy, he's on Amethyst Ruby, and then Andrew Lentini is on Amber Steel. But it looks like I almost saw that. Was it a Steel song? Because I think I saw an Ariel. Looked like.
Yeah, so Andy was playing the Steel Song variant, so I didn't know that at this stage, but I did get the Diablo down to 1. I think because I had a crab in hand, I decided to go for the Diablo instead, just thinking that maybe on turn 3 I could try and take out something if it was questing aggressively with the crab. I don't know why, I just really hate the Chernobog. Just having the restriction that you have to quest and that can be removed so easily with the 1 wheel power, I just prefer not to play them down.
Just like sure. I think maybe having the crab in hand, Diablo is quite good with the crab.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Challenge. But yeah, I guess Diablo.
Okay. So Chernobog, you could have quested turn 1, you can cycle it away. But with Diablo, you're still questing for the same amount. And I guess if Andrew does cast a song, which they can do on turn 2, to banish the Chernobogs. So if you play Chernobogs, you have to go. Oh, it looks like we jumped in time apparently. Okay, so turn 2, he inked the Sisu and go into Flynn Rider.
Yeah, so I think I had a second Sisu here, so just getting that Flynn down. The Robin Hood can challenge that in strength, so can sort of stop the trigger, but definitely good to try and get that early pressure on.
Very strong. But yeah, at this point, this gets hit with Let the Storm Rage on, right? Like Cindy just so that's 2 Robin Hoods.
And yeah, so I think here obviously it does get taken down by the Storm, but I think from the mulligan, I think Andy took quite a large mulligan, so I sort of put him on that he didn't have a song, just the likelihood from a high mulligan is obviously lower. So, and in that case, even if he did, I could always just take out the Cindy with the crab, which would be pretty good as well.
Robin Hoods?
Yeah, 2 Robin Hoods, a strength, and a big Cindy, by the way.
Why doesn't Cindy just sing and just
well, Flynn's not currently activated with the Robin Hood.
Yeah, so but following turns, we do build something. And Cindy didn't quest or sing or anything.
Now, at this stage, I didn't know that Andy was playing the Bare Necessity, so I probably should have inked the Friends if I knew that was the case, but I don't think too many Steel songs are playing it, so I definitely just held on to it to try and draw some more cards, maybe next turn with the Sisu.
And if you get rid of Flynn Rider, then yeah, because it's always a Sisu, and now you got to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
So like, Cindy, like, yeah.
It's not too bad.
So I'm not sure why he did this thing beforehand.
Should be able to dig a song with the aerial,
Yeah, so
probably sing strength Cindy, and
Also,
then
I'm not
get
sure
a nice
about
white board.
yeah, I'm not sure about the double Robin Hood as well. Okay, so yep, goes into the hero Sherwood. Yeah.
And yeah, I think we'll see Robin Hood challenge into the Diablo, and that one gains 2 lore on the
2 lore.
challenge. May see Cindy sing strength on Flynn, or they may just not worry about it. Slightly clunky hand here.
What's that card on the right? Is it Bare Necessities?
Bare Necessities, yeah. That's not every Steel Song list is running that, so it's nice
Yeah,
to see someone to.
It's not a huge. I'm not sure about that.
The
It's only
Bare
like
Necessities.
a brawl.
That's
Brawl. Oh no, you definitely get rid of friends from the other side. Friends.
Yeah, so I definitely didn't see this coming. So, yeah, interestingly, they took the brawl out. I don't think I was really targeting too much with it. Maybe the aerial, but yeah, I mean, the Friends is probably better unless he's planning to sing Whole New World.
Yeah, so you quest with the Robin Hood. The other Robin.
yeah.
I feel that Robin Hood probably. Yeah, so that Robin Hood you quest with, and then you get Sherwood to challenge the Diablo. It feels like a bit of a waste, but you're getting more either way, right?
No challenge.
No.
I wonder what.
Yeah, interesting here that he didn't challenge with the Robin Hood. I'm maybe worried about a crab since he did see my hand taking it out for a favourable trade. So, yeah, I think that's reasonable. I'm probably questing with the Diablo next turn, so you can probably just challenge it next turn, give me the card, and then try and go for the Whole New World.
Because he's afraid that the Sisu might trade into it, right? He's got like 4 cards in hand, so Sisu would have been on 5.
He's got 2 cards in.
Yeah, but with the crab, then I'd go up to 6 strength, so I would be able to take it out. And I'm pretty sure I still have the crab in hand, but he knew I had that. Yeah, and we see the chat saying there's no strength in hand, so, you know, a pretty good call saying he didn't have a song there, but maybe a little bit risky going down the Flynn route.
No, Cindy, Cindy sang. So
there's the crab play.
Crab onto Diablo.
Be prepared, probably not the card that Darcy's looking here, but yeah, singing that friends on the inside is very nice there. And
Yeah, I just forgot to tap my ink there, so I don't think I have many inkables in hand here, so little bit of a disaster here. Had to ink the churn box, unfortunately. I don't think I have any draw.
But if you did, though, it'd be very good. All right, so Ariel, top 4.
Hopefully Andrew can find the song.
Yeah, so far she's not been a big hit in the deck recently. All right, we've got something Whole New World?
Yep, Whole New World or Strength, I think, are the 2 options. So yeah, this one probably makes sense. Yeah, Andrew's getting some nice board presence going here with Robin Hood.
Darcy hasn't really been able to grow their hand with like any of the difficult stuff. No rabbits, no rabbits or kings or anything. So Whole New World might be okay at some point.
Yeah.
Like, I think you just sing with the aerial on the following turn, right? So
yeah, and then at least you've got fresh ink, you've got the cards in hand.
Normal region?
No, so that's Cindy. Big Cindy going into
Big
the
Cindy.
Inquire.
Yeah, okay.
And may see a double challenge on the Sisu here, or we may just see.
So he wants to try to reduce the number of cards in his hand before he challenges with his Robin.
Yeah, that's very smart.
Lore is still pretty low on both sides.
Yeah. And that's where.
I mean, yeah, I don't mind the double challenge here into the Sisu. It's probably the play. You've still got your singer next turn, and you get the 2 lore.
He would have gained some lore from the Flynn Rider.
No, because.
The thing is, I can take it out with the crab next turn, and if I get something like a brawl, then I've sort of cleared the board, so probably best to not challenge here, I'd say.
Yeah, that's true. That would be 5 for Darcy. Okay, cool. So
Mm.
sing Whole New World. I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah.
Cool. But like, see, the thing is, you go sing Whole New World. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think the cast are just talking about now that, you know, you can't really do much. You can play a 1-drop, but the Sisu is just going to take it out for, you know, 3 damage and not get banished. And, you know, the crowd will probably take out Robin Hood. And then if I brawl the aerial, I've got the Flynn. Yeah, so I didn't know about the singing here.
Not sure. Like, they're doing a little bit of investigation right now. So right now, Darcy's turn starts again. Definitely Sisu's the biggest thing on the field right now, just because Andrew's got like full hand from after the whole New World.
Oh yeah, Sisu's up to what, 7 attack now.
Yeah, so
I'll say one thing about the stream is it would have been nice to maybe have some easier to see dice. These ones are just the like trove ones, so they're a little bit difficult to see on stream. But I do like, yeah, and then we see the brawl come down. So board sort of cleared now. I'm looking like in a pretty good spot. So once the Steel Song deck sort of runs out of singers, you're looking pretty favourable here. And obviously the quest is not really any rush characters, so I can just freely quest with that one there. But yeah, I think I would have liked to see the dice just be one. Like I've got some reasonably good, like quite bright ones, but I've seen some other people have really good one. Let's just pause it here. I think there's some chat here. So Andrew's always good to go against as well. Local set champs on the regular. Yeah, he was a nice guy as well. Sisu eats. Ange Crab eats. Oh yeah, Robin Hood. Crab eats the Robin. Play 5 ink of cards. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So look, I mean, you can call it a misplay, but it's hard to know what was going through his head. Like, I did just ink a Chernobyl, so maybe he had a call that I was low on ink, but I did have a rabbit in hand, so yeah, look, the chat is just going, off, which I think is, they were pretty ruthless from what I heard as well. So, all right, let's get back into it. It's muted.
Back on this, they don't have any board wipes. They just have to keep using single target removal, and like Sisu is just a really big body. It's like 4 health.
Yeah,
so
4 health.
You have to Zeus it, right?
But that's still 2 damage from the earlier challenge.
Yeah.
So that's a nice answer, but yeah, Andrew still needs to find a way to establish.
I think there's a Pluto in hand, so that one probably needs to come down just to at least challenge these Flins. But I think what happens next is he just takes out the crab, and then I've got these 2 Flins that are triggering for 6, which sort of just runs me so far ahead.
I think we got Mr. Smee in hand. I can see Rapunzel in there.
So you see, you obviously have to keep inking, right? And he's got a whole new world.
Yep.
I think he just kept his board a little bit vulnerable from a whole bunch of those songs early on. Is that a Zeus? I'm not sure about that one, to be honest.
And have we got a 1-cost follower? I don't.
Yeah, I think Andrew's probably just a little bit nervous here. We were chatting during the game, and yeah, as soon as the Flynn trickies, he's like, oh, damn, forgot about those. So, it's really difficult playing on stream, and, a lot of the people in the chat, maybe might not realize that, the pressure that you get being on the camera. So it's definitely quite ruthless there.
Because now, like, he gains a
6
4?
lore.
Yeah,
6 lore from the double flame. That
yeah.
There.
So puts it up to like 12, I think. Yeah, so like puts up to 12. Then he can like quest for.
Yeah, the double Flynn was wild.
14.
Yeah, and we see Andrew there. Just he forgot about that, obviously.
You're getting to like end game sort of level.
Yeah.
So down to 14.
And I see another Sisu in there. So that's another high attack target.
Yeah, I mean, the chat's saying he must be on tilt, but I think he was, just a little bit like frazzled by the stream, I think.
So
fantastic here.
Like you obviously said one of the Flynns to challenge the Cinderella just because she's got 2 willpower.
Yep.
And it's clearly the better way to go. You're just putting off 1 questing, and you get so much value out of singing. No, what you doing? What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? No, challenge it. I know you want to like push towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, what's he gonna do? Sing a song? Yeah, like, and I even challenge here. So, like, obviously, maybe the casters can't see my hand, but like, yeah. Let's see what they say.
Yep.
Yeah, they backtracked on that pretty quickly. Like, if I get 1 Flynn trigger here, I just win anyway, right? But I guess I could have 2, but if he has to hardcast a song to remove it, then I'm not too stressed.
But they haven't developed enough experience in the metagame to know exactly what they're trying to avoid or exactly what they're trying to play around. So they're just like overly cautious, rather than some of these more experienced international players who will like play right up to the edge of their line, knowing, hey, I'm safe if I do this because you've got.
Let me go back and see what I might have missed that bit.
Like you obviously said one of the Flynns to challenge the Cinderella just because she's got 2 willpower.
Yep.
And it's clearly the better way to go. You're just putting off 1 questing, and you get so much value out of singing. No, what you doing? What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? No, challenge it. I know you want to like push towards the end, but Cindy represents a free like Storm Rage on every single turn. So, and your guys will still.
Here we go.
Oh, okay.
Playing the Fox. Yep. Keeping the other foot and case down here.
Yeah, but what is going to come out? So like I think a whole bunch of the players that we've seen today. I've spoken to them actually like post game. They're strong players, but they haven't developed enough experience in the meta game.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what you guys think. Guys watching at home, do you think I should have just challenged with the Flynn and keep them in play, or do you think I should have actually bounced with the Fox? I think I think they can hardcast a song. If they hardcast it, I'm not really too worried because then I can just play the Flynn down. But yeah.
Quote unquote feeling themselves a little bit more, they will, start like playing to the optimal a little bit more. So yeah, could just be nervous and just people just warming up. All right, didn't see what they picked up on
I think
their
that
arrow.
was a storm. Sorry, strength and raging fire here. Yep.
Okay, so it's probably just it was a Zeus, so we can't even play it. So it's probably going to be the game.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't think they've inked. So
No, they haven't inked, so they can play the Pete here, but it's fine with space.
I mean, the Pete doesn't even stop it because the Sisu's out and the Fox. So
free next turn, and then quest for 1, and then quest for Sisu. So that's what 6. So
we see Sam of Sidonia here saying the cast was so premature and everything. I imagine that's in response to the Flynn's questing, which I would agree. That's probably a little bit. Yeah, that chat is vicious here. Yeah, and I think Kiyoshi is saying maybe it's nerves. Yeah, I think I'd say he was a bit nervous as well.
That's 20 there, so that gets you over the line. So he has to use remove. But he's only got 3.
It's just game over here. I don't think he can counter the Flynn's law game. And he was just saying here, like, we'll go to the next game. And I was like, yeah, sure. If you pick up your cards, we can go to the next one.
Yeah, tough game.
But yeah, I think this is where Steel Song is so difficult. Like the timing on.
So yeah, obviously we're just joking here, and he's like, yeah, those 2 Flynn triggers were terrible, and just. Oh, it's the chat issue. That's why I was refusing to put Fergus on. Yeah, chat were pretty like brutal. They were sort of slamming a lot of people, so it was pretty full on. I mean, you see here Andy just getting roasted for some of the players, and obviously you can get nervous on stream. Like it's pretty difficult up there playing. Like I don't know if people saw the setup there, but it's pretty full on. They got like 6 different camera angles, and all the lights, and like you're sort of separated from everything. So it's difficult here, but obviously Andy and I are just joking about, he was pretty in good spirits about it. He wasn't too tilted by the sounds of it. So, and let's just pause before we get into this game. Keshi's saying Steel Song doesn't lose unless it's late game. Yeah, I agree. I think if I can get to the late game, I just win. But he's saying on my face, like, what is he doing? I don't think I was trying to do that. I was just playing my own game, and obviously the Flynn triggers. I don't know what's in his hand, so maybe he didn't have any other options. But yeah, I think the Sting there was probably a little bit questionable. You could sort of see where he was coming from. He sort of maybe tried to have a bit of a read on my hand that I wasn't doing too much, but if I had inking like this, maybe I've got a lot of uninkables, in which case my uninkables are basically all my removal. So like my big Sisu, Tremaine, be prepared. So maybe he's just trying to get rid of those, but I think definitely waiting another turn and probably not singing with the Robin Hood because he just gives himself 7 new cards, and the Sisu can just challenge to take it out. Let's get into game 2. Yeah, look, we'll get into that a little bit later, SN Baxter, but I don't think we should be calling for any bans. What people are doing, it's legal. We'll get into it a little bit later, of course, but we'll try not to be bashing or slamming anyone in this chat. Obviously, everyone's trying to do the best they can with what they're doing. So I think, there's no one to blame, or no one going to be, saying did a terrible job. It's just sort of thinking about where we can improve.
And used him to sing instead of to challenge, right? So you used him to sing the whole new world. Yeah. Okay, so they're mulliganing. Obviously, Darcy probably wants a mulligan for the curve of 1, 2, 3. Yep.
Yeah, so obviously Be Prepared goes, Tremaine goes. The one drops are good to have. Flynn's not as good. I'd probably just want the Diablo on turn 1 going second against Steel Song in case they get the Cinderella down.
Probably looking for Snake here, but he could go one drop into double one.
Darcy's on the draw this game?
On the draw, correct, yeah.
So you go Room, Flynn Rider, Bloom Free Rider, Cecil, right? And then Andrew, puts you on the play, it's Cindy.
I think Flynn is not as impactful in this match.
Yeah, I would agree. Flynn's not as good going second.
Vulnerable to a lot of these Steel Song removals,
True,
so
yeah.
you're often looking for something like Snake as your ideal alternative, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the Snake's pretty good. I would like to go for a Snake. Second best would be double one drop, I suppose.
Yeah, not attack wise. They either have a song.
Yeah.
It's pretty good here. He was a great guy. We're having a good chat and joking around here, so
Andrew Mulligan for 4.
super fun time there. And we've even got the same sleeves,
Yeah,
so
we have the matching color sleeves. What's
Yeah,
going on here,
I
right?
yeah, the cast is just commenting on that. Very funny.
Do we just pair people up based on deck
Yeah,
color?
deck
Okay.
color, it makes sense.
What can I say? Mid sleeves are the best sleeves. You got to pick them.
Not what he's looking for.
It's actually relevant because there's so many low strength characters Steel Song.
So I mean, this is pretty good here. You know, you don't get the Cinderella, so I can go with something like a Broom or a Chernobog instead and save that other Diablo for later. So seeing no Cinderella here is pretty good for me.
So turn 1, solid Robin Hood. Amethyst, always no shortage of turn 1 plays, so it's just a question. Chernobog.
I'll move over here so we can see the chat. Sorry.
Probably Chernobog, right? This
Diablo in there as well.
version.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
Bugs that get tests the
Yeah, so I'll go Chernobogs here because I'm not really at risk of having a song sung to take it out.
Robin Hood stops you from questing. So yeah, I think that's a good play.
Yeah.
And we got
Thank you, casters.
one Lilo in hand.
So no turn 1 Cindy. It depends on if he plays turn 2 Ursula. So turn 2 Lilo, okay. So he's got a little bit more of a.
I mean, obviously Andrew doesn't quest here because you've got the Shift Robin Hood next turn, which I can sort of get a read on, but I can't really do much to stop it at this stage.
And he kept the Robin Hood up. So
Yeah,
the question is,
not questing is interesting. I guess
I mean, it's not really that interesting. Like, it's just basically a read that he's got a Robin Hood. Or if you really want to get, like, super meta, he's just, like, not questing to make me think he has a Robin Hood. But, you know, basically not questing says to me that he has the Shift Robin Hood. Otherwise, you'd always quest, right? Because you trade a 1-for-1, but now I lose my draw power and I don't quest. If you didn't have a Shift and you had other good cards in your hand, you probably would just quest.
you keep the Chernobyls up, or do you quest it and recycle the hand, right? So I guess, okay, look, but here's the thing: if you bounce it with Snake, he's only like,
Yeah, I'd probably ink the Flynn here. I think I had a Diablo in hand, so I'll probably just play double one drop next turn, this turn because I don't have the Snake. So I think Flynn should go in. I hope it does.
actually he can't. He doesn't have enough to play Strength for Radiant Fire and another character. So yeah, so he didn't have the Singer. So
Maybe just even quest first and banish. Maybe not banish because you think that going first he's probably going to shift Sing because I have so many cards in hand, but you could just challenge. So it's a bit tricky here deciding on what to do with the Chernobogs.
yeah, he's got a Broom.
Yeah, I think he's considering inking the Broom and just running out the Flynn, which makes sense.
It's fine. It's reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is okay just because he doesn't have a Singer down, but I still don't really like it looking back on it.
We save. So quest. All right, cool.
And I mean, there's
Does he
no
cycle through? He's got to cycle through, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's no clean trades
Look,
here
if he doesn't cycle through, Andrew can just run the Lilo.
I mean, yeah, this is... I mean, the Lilo challenge into it I don't mind too much. Obviously, the longer the game goes on, so if he's not questing, I'm in a more favourable position. But I think by doing... Yeah, I don't know. I probably should have banished it.
Into it, and then you can just revive the Lilo on a future turn.
That's true, yeah.
Probably just sings Storm here onto the Flynn, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
There is the shift.
Clear the board.
That was quite a spicy draw for him.
Alright, cool.
Was that off the top?
So Robin Hood can quest for 2, and then you can send Lilo in, or you just quest with the Robin Hood. He's got a Broom.
I don't think he drew it off the top. Let's check.
Running out the Flynn, which makes sense.
It's fine. It's reasonably safe. So quest. All right, cool.
I thought he had it in hand.
Does he cycle through? He's got to cycle through, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's no clean trades
Look,
here
if
for
he
Yeah, no, he already had it in hand.
You can just run the Lilo into it, and then you can just revive the Lilo on a future turn.
So the caster is saying the Lilo runs into it, but I don't mind if the Lilo runs into it. You know, like I'm favored in the late game. The longer the game goes, the more I'm favored, I would say, until I get like petered out of the game and can't do anything. But even then, I've got big CC. So I think the longer the game goes on, the more favored I am. So if he's not questing, I'm not too upset. And I've got other draw cards in hand as well.
That's true, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There is the shift off the top. That was quite a spicy off the track.
Cool. So Robin Hood can quest and then you can send Lilo in, or you...
Yeah, we see here, this announces, lol, it's okay to have a bit of silence for suspense. They definitely do talk a lot, and you know, there's a lot to talk about in these games, especially when players are playing quite quickly. You know, there's a lot of things to get through in a short amount of time. So, but yeah, sometimes a little bit of silence can be good as well. And you know, you would have seen I do a bit of casting as well, so this is good feedback for me as well to sort of take into account. But you know, silence can sometimes be good.
You just quest with the Robin Hood, and then so Robin Hood obviously challenges. I think. No! What you doing, mate? Just
Clear on the board. That's right.
no challenging the Trina box, and then quest with the Lilo. Your turn player, you've got initiative. You got speed, and then you leave the Trina box. Trina box isn't invasive, right? I'm like yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're gonna see.
I think this play was fine.
So question one.
I'll probably banish it, but like Andy doesn't really mind if I banish it to draw a card, right? He's probably going to sing Whole New World next turn. He's got pretty good odds of finding it, I'd say. I mean, I have to cycle here, right? I can't really afford the Robin Hood to start clearing the board. I guess I could have left it there and challenged into it, but I don't really have any good cards to play down, and I needed more ink. You see there, I've got like a big CC Tremaine, a rabbit, so I'd be inking the Brawl to play nothing, so I just needed something to play.
So turn for you, so it just be Sisu, right?
Yeah, I wish I had a CC. That would be great. I probably, I don't know. I probably should have inked the Brawl to play Diablo. Maybe that was probably better.
Brawl. What? Okay. Because theoretically, if you want, he could just revive the Lilo, and he'd actually just be.
Yeah. So I think this play was probably wrong. Like dreadfully wrong. I think probably inking the Brawl to quest play the Fox challenge. I'm pretty sure I had a Fox in hand. Yeah, I don't know why I made that play, but that was definitely incorrect.
Head on it. It's like he traded a 2 in 3.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's not even down a card. Yeah.
And then the aerial. All right. Probably looking for a whole new world. One came Zeus.
So like
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Holy uninkables Batman. Yes, indeed. There's a lot of uninkables, but definitely a misplay that sort of cost me a bit there, for sure. And then getting the Churner box back to hand, I could just, ink it as well. And the Churner box drew me into another uninkable in the big CC, which I really need, so definitely punished for that.
Whole New World, like theoretically, yeah, you can drop a little bit more, and like Darcy doesn't really affect the game because he's already got a ton of cards. Yeah, so drop another. So, got a question, right? What are you afraid of? You're afraid of Fox in the Crab or something? No. Yeah, but you have to go one drop Fox in the Crab. Nah. He's safe. Yeah.
And the rabbit.
Right. Fine.
I mean, that's all I had. I couldn't play anything else.
I'm really liking Andrew's position in this game. Cards in hand is a little bit low, but apart from that, yeah, you've got.
You probably just.
Got aerial, so.
I don't know what that other card is.
On board, yeah.
So what would be really sweet, if you can ping off that rabbit with some piece of removal, and then after Darcy's drawn the extra card, then you whole new world. That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's a pretty good play.
Very nice.
Zeus draws card. Questing for free.
And we may see bare necessity.
So, like, I see at the chat, a lot of them are saying, like, yeah, misplay. Obviously, the Whole New World, I would agree, probably was a misplay, but it would be good if they would say what the misplays were, so then everyone could learn rather than just saying this is wrong, you know? I think, sure, you can say do this and do that, would be a bit more helpful than just saying this is, the whole thing's wrong, you know? But I think we're trying to spot out a few misplays here. I definitely found a couple of mine. Another Tremaine here.
So yeah, that can be one thing that Deck struggles with. You don't get your whole new world, getting up to 5 or 6 ink can be...
People here saying you ready ink at the start of turn. Some point judge is going to start calling this. Like, sure, you probably should be readying the ink at the start of the turn, but sometimes you just forget, you know, you're under a time pressure, so, you know, as long as it gets readied and both players know what's going on, I don't really see the issue.
Very difficult. Outside of that, we've got Rapunzel.
Wait, so Andrew didn't ink.
Andrew didn't ink, correct? Yeah.
Don't know about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's the Chrome.
Cool. There's Ariel and
Challenges
Foxy.
Ariel.
I got an ink here. I don't
Probably
really...
not feeling too bad about the way this game is.
I'm feeling pretty bad.
Andrew's got reasonably good board control.
Does Andrew... Oh, so he plays... Does Andrew have Rapunzel in hand?
Again, a lot of misplays, but not saying the misplays, so a bit unfortunate there from these guys.
Okay, cool.
Now you get run out here and hold your world.
No,
So
okay,
yeah,
cool.
this is a pivotal turn.
It would have been an excellent Rapunzel turn. Like you just you know send in
Yeah,
the Robin Hood and then
that
you
would be
Rapunzel at
incredible,
option. Yeah. So Lilo's back, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, and
just
it's
took a temporary leave of absence. He's back, and we got
He
better
is,
better necessities. Like Darcy's looks like Dice has 2 cards in hand.
4, I think.
I think I got like 4, and they're all bad.
I think we'll see bare necessities go into the 12, and then we'll see them.
If he bears, then a whole new world, I'm losing it. I mean, that's fine here, though. You look at my hand and you see a whole new world. You play the whole new world. Like, I just top deck an Inkable, I start banishing characters. I don't know, I don't think you can keep me with that hand. It might look a bit uninkable, but I don't play too many Inkables. It's like 13, which is reasonably low. And I got most of them in hand.
So it really comes down to like, do you want to put 4 damage onto Robin Hood? Because yeah, can challenge into the Madam M Fox, which I think is probably just the right thing to do, anyways. Naveen can quest for 2, but has singers.
You probably just sing and then sing a whole new world, because if you find Pete
Whole new world or storm, right?
afterwards, your board's safe. It's so safe.
Storm on the Chrome? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, preserves the health on the Robin Hood, draws a card, and yeah, I think we'll see. Interesting.
Yeah, okay. So he's still got.
So he's still got 3 inks. So he can
Like, you get rid of 4 cards off my hand.
Oh, look at that hand.
Alright,
4
cool.
uninkables.
Yeah, cool.
I
He goes.
think Darcy's
7.
happy to see the back of those.
Like a little bit, but not really.
3. So basically, what? It's just like.
Yeah, that discard was tragic.
Or just
Or like an Ariel or something.
oh, there's a symbol.
Probably needed the Pete here. I guess I'm only at 5 ink, so...
Lilo, if he's got one. But also, I know these Steel Song lists tend to play lower amounts of Lilos.
Yeah, usually maybe 2 they'll cap out at. And 2 more ink. Darcy's on 5 ink, so 2 away from big beef debates.
Yeah, but like, I won't be able to beat both.
Yeah, that's...
Now we.
I mean, I gotta take out some of these singers.
Now we hear it all, so that rushes into
Draws a card,
Robin Hood, and then Darcy's turn.
Yeah, Finn's not doing much
I
here.
think I see a 1-drop. So yeah, that was a nice. play
Yeah,
from
no.
Darcy.
So he laws up with the rush.
Yep.
So it goes up to.
Yeah, I mean, I've got enough cards here. I don't mind questing with it. If he challenges, then great.
Andrew's got some good stuff.
Got
in hand.
a singer on board.
Yeah, he's got another Naveen.
He'll just go like Pete and block me out of the game pretty much.
Yeah. This is kind of what Steel Song wants to do, though. They've got a nice wide board, they've got the singer online, and there's the shift Simba.
Oh, okay.
I
Is
love
he pink for
this
2 damage?
card.
I think.
Yeah, even the chat here can't really decide what's going on. Like, inking Bare Necessities, playing a whole new world. I mean, if you played the Bare Necessities, it would have done nothing except see the hand, which he's going to see anyway, of whole new world. Yeah.
I think you pink for 2 damage, right? You pink for 2 damage on the.
No, that's a different one. This is the one that readies up the characters. So,
Oh, it's that one. Okay.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's right.
so
7-1 doesn't.
quest for 6, and then ready up Lilo, and
Yeah.
ready up.
Oh, interesting to see they say they can't mark your hand with a die like that. That seems weird because I feel like the casters want to know and your opponent wants to know. It'd be interesting if anyone comments on that.
Just deciding on to play here. Last one. Discard pile.
Maui's got 2 left on it because he challenged into Robin Hood.
Yep. Andrew does here. Yep. Oh, nice tempo.
Yeah.
And probably decent. I guess he excludes.
Lilo for sure has
He
to go
probably
into
needs to play Pete this turn.
Lilo doesn't have enough strength to go through. Might see Naveen.
Wait, Broom's with 2.
Oh no, because I think I play Pete this turn. Oh, I play the whole. Be prepared.
The one to Chernobog into the one.
Yeah.
And we got a whole new world and that's Storm.
Yeah, see, Oreo Octopus telling them, yeah.
Might see that just sum here by Naveen. Cycle the card. Or the other option is just quest.
Yeah, questing for 2 is always
Quest for 2 with Lilo,
theoretically Andrew should have been like questing super hard because he started this game and he kind of just like his foot off.
Yeah, I mean, you
the gas a
just
little
quest
bit.
you.
Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, you draw the card to see what you get. Because if you get a Pete, you're going to play the Pete and then whole new world. So I can't, like, sing any like songs, play Brawl, or things like that. Or because you want more cards on the field. Like, if you draw a card and you draw something really good, you can just hold the whole new world for a turn. And, like, what's it going to be that you're going to be really upset about discarding? So I think a few of these commenters don't really know.
Amethyst Ruby. Basically, is it be prepared turn? Are we getting prepared?
I mean, why would you not quest with Lilo and Naveen, right? What am I threatening it with?
Here we go. Yep. And yep, that's
Yeah. I mean, you could have ready these characters, but I don't think it really matters.
Now, does Andrew
If he challenges something else, he's probably happy that the symbol lives.
3 cards.
Yeah,
Yeah,
on the empty board.
That's why you have to keep inking
Yeah.
with Steel Song.
Yeah.
Because once you get to this point, like you don't need so much ink. Just Lilo just keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Like, people saying he missed the Simba trigger, but it, like, doesn't matter. Because, like, if he takes out the other guys, you'd rather have the Simba around. Like, sure, you probably should have, but I don't have enough ink to play multiple rush characters, really. So it's like, it's not a huge deal. Like, I need to be preparing here, otherwise I'd probably just lose.
Go and just plain Simba.
Yeah. Yep.
Bad.
This has to have answer. Like
7 ink.
so, Lady Tremaine's an thing, but he did pitch 2 of them from the earlier Whole New World.
Yep.
So 3 left. And so
Fox
Lilo is just kind of a pain. You kind of just assume that Lilo is a clock. So
annoying, such an annoying card to deal with. Alright,
and you're kind of behind on law, so it's really tough to.
Yeah, I don't know what my hand is, but Brawl probably shouldn't have come down.
All right, okay.
I guess I got to just slow the questing, right?
It goes up to 5 law.
I think that answers the Simba.
Nah, I probably should have just played the
This
Fox.
is another thing. The Simba with the Lilo.
Save the Brawl. Ink the Brawl even.
Because Lilo comes in inserted, then the Simba, if he's inserted at the end of the turn, he will then ready the Lilo, which protects the potential characters. Andrew deciding whether to.
He's got a Rapunzel in hand.
Interesting to say buy your Chinese, Japanese cards now. Don't know if these guys have played in a Japanese or Chinese tournament before, but those players are very good.
Songs provide for cool. Yeah, I see a whole new world in there. Looks like Storm, so just a handful of songs and big Robin Hood.
Not enough singers to take advantage of.
Well, Simba could sing Zeus here and then just play the Robin Hood. That seems
So
pretty reasonable.
even though songs exist, Andrew should be trying to quest with his character significantly more.
Yeah.
So Robin Hood's fine. I think he's gonna sing when he should not be singing. He should just be questing it out.
Let's see. I
It is
think
go, so you kind of do have to sing. Like you kind of do have to remove the goat. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it
'cause the
just, it,
goat
it just trades it, right?
Such a nice answer. Simba is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably do just sing the Zeus now, keep the board clear so I can't bounce and challenge.
Very solid position, mainly because he was able to build a board and Darcy was forced to be prepared. So whoever be prepared is usually on the back foot. They have to try to regain board again. So toss up. It's like trying to be. So he inks a Rapunzel.
I think inking's okay.
Simba, and then he's gonna just like.
Oh, okay. The sing here is interesting.
Okay.
I mean, if he hasn't seen a Pete yet, so if he just finds Pete, he's looking pretty good.
Kind of like, looks like every time Andrew is like whole new worlding towards the end of his turn, so he doesn't have as much like resources to like just play out the rest of his hand. He has like one card. I think he just.
I mean, you have to play the Pete here.
Plays a whole bunch of stuff and then starts turn with whole new world. Right? And then you just got a whole hand to play.
Yeah, you got a whole hand and you got all your fresh.
So we see a Pete here, which prevents Darcy from playing. Be prepared, roll.
Nice.
But I think you send the goat in or you send the fox in, right?
I feel like you have to trade here, otherwise he's questing for 5.
Off the goat. Doesn't want the 6.
Oh, I can't play an action, so I probably just, unfortunately, have to just start dealing with this board.
For sure, Pete goes.
Choice there. Good one.
Like, they're saying lucky, but like he's played a whole new world already and hasn't seen a single Pete. You've got pretty good odds of hitting it. I mean, sure, he probably should have just sung the Zeus and done it next turn, but I still think this was okay.
Okay, so it just means that it's a little bit of cycling, you know. They'll quest for like 2 lore and roll you 2 cards next turn, easy. I think, all things considered, I think Darcy might be able to swing the back.
It's possible, one thing about Steel Song is it's not a particularly fast deck. You don't put a lot of high questing characters on the board and then try and race your way to 20. It's really trying to control.
Yeah, I think he needs another Pete here.
So we got Ursula. Swing 4.
And Andrew's in a tricky position here because if they run out their whole hand, just play all their characters, and then run into be prepared. That's definitely.
Yeah, he'll probably just find another Pete here though.
Need like some form of AoE. Like for a situation like this, does it need to run like Giant Tinkerbell?
I think it's
I'll probably just play grab your swords.
It's hard to find room for all these answers. So I mean, a lot
Yeah, another Pete is pretty good here. Probably just quest.
used to run the grab swords.
True. Yeah. Grab your swords.
Yeah, it was
Uninkable
sort of
5, right?
Yeah, Uninkable 5. We've sort of seen that fall out of favor. I think Steel Song have kind of accepted that if you get to the point where you need to wipe your opponent's wide,
I might just sing Zeus.
So it's just better to run some proactive cards.
So he's considering whether to quest with this Pete or not. There's no reason not to,
Robin
right?
Hood.
Like
The Pete just came out. He's considering with the Robin Hood.
oh yeah, Robin Hood. Yeah.
The sing's probably okay.
He's using it to sing.
There we go, Zeus.
Okay.
Otherwise, I can like shift and play the fox.
I love Hercules. I don't know. It came out a little bit early for me, so I didn't quite catch it yet. I was all about the Saturday morning cartoon, but the movie.
Yeah, I don't know if I should play this rabbit here. Now I just draw into another Be Prepared I can't play.
This second.
I don't know if I have any rush though, because I've played a couple.
Players have been able to build boards. I guess it's because of a whole new world. Just like
I think I've got
you dump your hand.
3 Be Prepareds.
Wipe your board, and then whole new world, dump your hand again. So all right.
I don't think I banish them here. I just keep them in play.
Yep. All right. Cool. They're checking into the library.
Good to see M Puma sticking up for Andrew here.
Yep. So question is, does he quest with them and draw a whole bunch of cards? I think you do, right? Like
I'm not sure. I feel like with the
No, I don't draw. I don't want to give Andrew an incentive to play Whole New World.
Andrew's used free.
I probably should have just quest with them though, I think, but my hand's a bit crap, so maybe I need them. But they're still in the library. So if they get challenged and banished, the library's probably not getting taken down. So I think I probably do just quest with them here.
Two whole new worlds? Yeah, I haven't seen any go into the discard pile, so there's one in their hand as far as last one.
Cool. So this
I think
turn,
there is actually.
Yeah. So this turn he's representing what? 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Yeah. 7. All right. So that puts him up to 18.
And then, Darcy's.
18. And
I definitely should have quest, but I don't think I should have drawn. I think Mini King Killer here. I think definitely quest. But the drawing just, I mean, then he just whole new words me, and then I lose all my card draw. So
Just shoot a whole bunch of lasers just down on the little guys.
and people don't realize how many songs he's down at the moment. Like he's played 3 Storm, he's played 3 Zeus, he's got a couple of Strength, but you know, if he's singing with his characters, he's not questing, which is fine.
Yeah. World's greatest mind as well. That's
Yeah, that goes.
nothing relevant in this matchup.
Yeah.
Whole thing sideways, yeah. And even if Dark,
Yeah, I think probably taking out the Lilo with the Chernobog.
I see like be prepared.
That's that
Like
18.
18, yeah. So
I was just hoping I'd get a Be Prepared off next turn. That was very wishful thinking.
18, I think. Yeah, cool. I think it was like +7 off that. Yeah. I don't think you need to commit any more characters to the board. I think that's
Nah, I don't
pretty
think so
solid. Yeah. All right. Okay. Just be extra safe. Just stick one out there. No!
The hand is empty.
What you doing?
Yeah.
Don't do
Wow,
that.
that's 3 B preps.
Okay.
Oh.
So, all right. So probably to his defense, like he didn't know his opponent had B prepares, right? But it just gives your opponent to just draw sort of an option.
That is indeed game. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, cool. I might look like an idiot now on stream because like no, it's just
Yeah, and I think that's all it does is B preps. So
Alright, cool.
not sure.
I couldn't be prep the board. He had the Pete in play.
He might still have 1 left in the deck, and he can draw.
maybe 600 IQ play was like, all right, I knew my opponent had 3 B preps.
Yeah,
and I'm
that
gonna
was big
whole new
brain
world
right
of-
there.
Yeah, big prep.
So Darcy can draw 4 cards here. One of the interesting things, or one of the things
I don't have anything left. I'm just drawing for the sake of it.
and is banished in the library. The library effect also triggers, so he gets to draw 2.
Yep, yeah.
So I think that's what Darcy's looking for the big prepared.
I don't have a Be Prepared left. I used 1 already and then 3 just hit the discard.
I think that's about the only answer.
Deck is
for
getting
deck
a little bit thin there.
Yeah.
It's not like he's only got 1 turn, so like
Yeah.
I guess theoretically it doesn't matter how low it's
B
getting.
prep or bust.
Yeah. Dig deep. You didn't get it?
Oh, look at all the cards in hand. Still none of the answers. So yeah, might be all we see.
Did he not consider? Did he not consider like moving the rabbit into the library and then sending the rabbit into like Pete or something?
The library's saying friends on the other side, so I think
Howard, so I could not play the Be Prepared. Trust me, I would have loved to have played the Be Prepared. So I think obviously these people in chat are not really paying attention to the game as much as like the casters and stuff, but they definitely make some good points, I think, to learn from.
that's
Oh, the rabbit saying the other
yeah,
side. Yeah.
saying
Okay.
friends. So. And then there's another friends who's hard cast. Darcy's just digging, but he's not.
What's the so the optimal you send in the Chernobyls on the library to draw 4 cards, and then I think you pay 1 on the rabbit to move across, send that in, draw 2 cards. Because like if you're digging for the Be Prepared, you're wasting your board anyways, right?
Yeah.
And then at that point, theoretically, you can friends from the other side.
Yeah. I
yeah.
think Darcy also had another friends, which is just hard casters. So. Yeah.
So
It's so funny. Look at this giant handful of cards, and none of them are the ones that Darcy's looking for. So. And yeah,
that's it.
That is it.
All right, cool. Your worst.
Well
Well played, sir.
So
That
one
was-
apiece there.
1 apiece for.
Alrighty, and that was the how many games did I play to get there? So you play 3 best of 2s, so played 6 games. Yeah, I understand there was a couple of mistakes there from me. I think the 2 main ones is when I played the Brawl instead of just questing and inking the Brawl and playing the Fox to take out the Lilo. And then the second one there, I think, was not challenging into the Lilo. Like, I think I probably should have quested. I don't think, maybe the challenge does enough, but I think maybe because I've gotten the 2 Tremaines and the CCs have been banished already, that I probably should have challenged just because I don't have as many removal options. So I think, maybe taking out a Lilo with the Chernobyls and questing with the other one was the right play. But Yeah, and then I'll probably just draw off it. But just having the 3 be prepareds in the hand for the second whole new world and the 2 CCs and the terrains, I don't really know how I play around that. And without the be prepareds, I don't win that game ever. So the question is, what could I have changed to make it so that my be prepareds don't get blocked by Pete and don't get discarded? And I don't really think there was much I could have done to play around that. Yeah, a lot of people in the chat, obviously, I know there's a lot of people having a go at the casters, having a go at the players throughout as well. I just want people to realize that it is difficult playing on stream. You're bound to make mistakes. You know, a lot of people just go for fun. Like, I can't speak for everyone else there, but I played like 3 games with this deck before rocking up and just went not really expecting too much. So people, you know, we're not as hardcore as some of the American European players, I think. And, you know, these casters, this is their first time doing the game. There's a lot of cards to learn, especially if they haven't been playing regularly. Like, I know Jason owns a shop and, you know, he's not playing all the time. He doesn't know all the cards. So it's definitely something to be aware of. And I think chat was probably a little bit ruthless. All right, so just reading the chat here. Yeah, for sure. Fergus did super well. Yeah, I think it's probably the right play, not putting the kid on stream. I think that, you know, if you watch this back and see some of the comments, like it's one thing to have comments that are sort of talking about your players and saying that they're wrong, they should have done this and that, but a lot of these people are just directly targeting the players themselves, saying this person sucks, they're shit, why have we put them on stream, which I think we should never really stoop to as a community. I think that's really bad. And I don't know if it's come from other communities. I know a lot of the Australian community isn't really like this. So I imagine it's a lot of the overseas people, because the Pokemon community, I've been in Australia, and you know, the little kind of community here, for the most part, everyone's super understanding and really nice and friendly. So it's a bit of a shame to see some of this stuff come out. And I'm all for talking about plays and how we can improve playing, but I think once we get into targeting people specifically and, you know, attacking them as the person, that's a slippery slope we don't really want to fall down. So yeah, it is a bit disappointing to see. Obviously, these are first-time tournaments. Like, I think this is Andy's first proper TCG. You know, like, he hasn't played before. He hasn't played on stream. He's nervous. Like, and, you know, you get a lot more information watching the stream. You get to see both players' hands. You know what's going on. Like, you don't know what's going through their head as well. And you're also under a time pressure. Yeah, there are a lot of brutal keyboard warriors thinking they're the perfect player. I would agree, and, you know, feel free to make comments on plays, but if you're wrong, you should expect some backlash as well. Like, I saw a lot of people there talking about why I didn't play Be Prepared when I physically couldn't, and talking about why Andy was drawing off Storm when you have to. It's not a May, so a lot of things like that, people just not really knowing what's going on and also attacking people personally, which you don't really like to see. So it is a bit disappointing, but, you know, that's the game. I think it's definitely going to deter a lot of people from playing on stream, especially newer players. So, and then, you know, people wanting some cool decks and like a bit off meta, those off meta players aren't going to want to play on stream if they're going to get slammed like this all the time. So it's definitely, yeah, a bit of a shame to see for sure. But anyway, that was my game. You know, if you have any other feedback, the comments didn't really mention too many things other than challenging the leader with the Chernobyls specifically. So if you have any other specific feedback that's not attacking anyone personally, feel free to chuck it in the comments or just the chat now. But that was the game. I won't go through the rest of the stream because, you know, a lot of other casters have done it, and also the casters at the event as well. But we'll jump into a bit about the tournament itself, hopefully on a bit more of a positive note. And while we're doing that, I'm just going to get something up from day 2 that we need to look at as well. It was in the top 8. Anyway, so yeah, the tournament itself, I think, was incredibly well run. I think for the amount of staff that they had, the venue was fantastic. Being at Marvel Stadium, I love going there. It's an awesome venue, and they kept everything nice and cool, and air conditioned was like 40 degrees, which was fantastic because it got very hot outside. And they had some great vendors there as well. So they had 2 vendors, the Turn Order Games and the Card Hub. I think there was an American one as well that were outside because they got cancelled last minute from what I heard. That's just speculation, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, so a good number of casters there. It's in great stock and things to buy. So it was really nice having those there for people to get their last minute cards from. They were selling, buying, lots of trading, some learn to play. So a lot of good things for people who are a bit newer to the game or needing cards there as well, which was good to see. I know at Pokemon we don't really have those as much, so it's nice to have them here and seeing those vendors as well. The side events, I think, were incredibly well run. I think having them all through Melee and being able to pay through there means you could sign up super easily. You didn't really have to line up, and you could, just sign up online. They had different time slots. There was a pack rush basically every half an hour. You could just get your 2 packs, play whoever you wanted, get some tickets, and then they had some sealed ones as well, like a Chaos sealed, a normal sealed, first chapter sealed. So those were sort of huge turnouts there, like getting, I think up to like 100 players at the sealed for first chapter. And then obviously they had some competitive constructed as well, which were 8 rounds, best of 2. So that took a lot of time out of the day for people. I was sort of a bit burnt out by that stage, so I decided not to go ahead with the constructed one. I just did some sealed stuff in the pack rushes, and that was super fun, just meeting lots of new people there as well, getting some tickets and having a side event, prize wall was really cool as well. Unfortunately, they didn't have the non-promos there, so they'll be shipping them out. Really appreciate them taking the time to do that, because obviously it's going to cost a lot of money and a lot of time. Unfortunately, Australian customs being what it is means it's a bit difficult to get all the cards here that you need from overseas. So super excited to manage to get the Cinderella and the Rapunzels. That'll be nice when they get that shipped out. And so for another thing they did really well was for the main event, having a reason to keep sticking it out to play. I think having a ticket threshold for how many points you got really incentivized people to keep playing throughout the tournament. So for those of you who weren't aware, if you get 10 tickets between 10 and 19, you'll get 6 tickets. If you get between 20 and 29 points, you'll get 14. And if you get 30 or more, you'll get 20, which is basically a Rapunzel promo. So really having that incentive that even if you've only won one game, you should stick it out to try and get that draw so you can get some extra tickets and get some more packs and things like that. So I was having a look at the standings, and I think everyone that completed all 7 games got at least 10 points. So really good to see that everyone who stuck it out to the end got compensated, even if it was just a couple of tickets for some packs. Was really good to see, and I think allowed for a bigger event throughout, and just getting those prizes. People sort of felt like it was a little bit more worthwhile to get there and take the time to compete in the tournament. One of the sort of onto a sort of bit more constructive criticism, I think. Some of the side events, there wasn't a clear idea from the judges what sort of some of the ticket payouts were. Like, I know people were getting different payouts for the same event, but I think once they sort of realized that was the case, they did go back and sort of give everyone who'd been doing the pack rushes the right amount of tickets. So they did a good job of rectifying where they sort of went wrong throughout the tournament, which was really good to see as well. Another one that sort of got brought to my attention was the fact that the competitive constructed at 9 o'clock was not quite clear on what the ticket payout was. I think they had a good idea of what it was, and then that was fine. Everyone was on board with that. You got 7 for competing, and then top 16 up to first got more, which is that's okay. Everyone gets something for competing, but then people were sort of told, from what I've heard from people, were told to drop that and go play in other side events because the ticket payouts are only for top 16. But then people who stuck out the whole thing actually got 20 more tickets as well. So it's only 20 tickets, but that's still going to be quite a lot for people as well. So it was a little bit disappointing that people were sort of told to drop to go play other events to get more tickets because they wouldn't win anymore. But then people who stuck it out did actually get more tickets. So that was a little bit unfortunate. I don't think they got compensated for that either, which was a bit of a shame, but that was just a couple of things from the side events there. But I think all the scheduled side events started within 5 to 10 minutes of when they were meant to, which I think is fantastic effort for how many judges they had, because it wasn't many at all. And the stream setup looked fantastic. The casters for their first time did a pretty good job. Obviously, it's hard when they don't play the game all the time, but that's I'm sure they'll just get better with time. I actually applied for the casting, unfortunately didn't get it, but yes, you got to see my crappy plays on stream instead. You're welcome. But I think the tournament as a whole went very well. A couple other things, a little bit more of a sour note. I might do a little bit of a video about this later. A few people that I know were on the receiving end of some questionable judge calls. It's hard to say whether they were correct or not. We don't have all the information just watching the stream. We can only see what's happened. We don't get to hear the players and what they've said, so it can be hard to know what the right call is. Like if a player makes plays on the board and it looks like something, but they say something that contradicts it, you do have to go with the verbal communication of what they've said. So that is final. So if someone said something, that is what the judges will go off. So we don't get to hear that, so it can be a bit difficult to know what the correct judge call is. But based on what we're looking, there were some that probably shouldn't have gone the way they went. But again, we don't have the whole story. It can sort of come back to being a bit more transparent with some of the judge calls and questionable things. Obviously, there's a lot on the line. People are playing for a lot in these tournaments. So having some clear judging and calls and being transparent about that with the community as well can be important. But I'll get into a couple of the judge calls that have been raised to my attention that I saw. I think the biggest one we'll probably start with was the one on stream. So let me just find the where it happened. It was in the top 8. Might be earlier than this actually. Sorry guys, sit tight while I try and find it. Yep. This is game 1, so if we go to game 2, or game 3 actually. That's game 2. And it'll be interesting to see what the chat has to say as well. And if you guys know what I'm talking about, yeah, here it is, it's coming up. Yeah, it's good seeing the chat, a few more keyboard warriors out here. But yeah, this is where the incident happened. So I'm not sure how many people saw it on stream. I imagine people were a little bit confused. But if we listen into the casters, we'll just go through it. I think it's coming up this turn, actually. So we'll listen into the casters and see what they say, because they sort of glossed over it a little bit. So it'll be interesting to hash it out here as well. I think particularly pay attention to Jesse's to see if he's saying anything as well. It's probably something I'll be looking out for.
We might see the snake just
You
pick
may
up
not
the
need to deal with the Maui straight away. Yeah, so it really depends on what Clement can pick up next, right? So if Clement just picks up bricks, then this game just stalls out.
Yeah.
He does have a small lore advantage, so in theory he can just like goat and rose his way out of this game. So yeah, so let's say every turn if he can just like sequentially play goat or rose, he's like gaining one lore without like leaving himself open, and then on one particular turn he can just turn everything sideways, right?
We do have the ulcer actually. If Jesse can find some way to do
I'm not.
the crab.
Okay, go for sure. So
Go,
gains
yep.
1, so it goes up to 8.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, if there was a way for
And then
Jesse
you move
to
the broom away.
banish the broom.
Banish broom. Oh,
There's the goat, banish the broom.
there's a rulings question. So I'm guessing, hey, can he do broom even though he said goat? And okay, so yeah. So it's a very interesting situation, right?
Yeah, we see him cut away here, and the casters sort of try and fill time for a little bit, but
And now the card in hand right now, 6 ink and no cards in hand.
For player, that might be through. The player probably has the board.
let's see what the chat says. So, yeah, we see Danks has comment on how the bag works. He's been to many events. Of course, he can banish it. You can do either in either order, correct? No way he's trying to shark the draw, ban, magic brush. What's the question? Yeah, so flaming comment here. I think, it's a genuine question that I think you're valid to ask. I don't think we should be disincentivizing people to ask judges questions when they're not sure. Sometimes you can take into account player experience, but I think you should always give people the benefit of the doubt that they don't know if you can do that or not. So I think asking the judge is always appropriate. So I don't think we should be shaming people for doing that. You don't know their intent, so it's really hard to say, are they doing it on purpose, even though they know the rules, to try and intimidate their opponent? it can be really hard. So these are sort of sensitive issues that can be really difficult to ascertain the intent from the players. I guess his opponent's confused and thinks broom is like bog. That's just incorrect. He's quested with the broom already. But just looking at things in the bag and resolve them as... Yeah, so all the chat basically agreeing that you can do it. So it'll be interesting to see what they say when the ruling comes out.
There's not a lot of big questers on there, and the law is not quite in the danger zone yet. But yeah,
So interesting here, Neil Borg says he has to declare both in the bag. I don't know if that's the case. I was under the assumption that everything automatically goes into the bag and then you choose to resolve things in the bag if you want. And if you move on to the next action, then anything in the bag is automatically forfeited. Even if it's a May. If it's not a May, then I believe you have to do it. But I think if it's a May and you move on to the next action, that's sort of a signal to say that you're not going ahead with that trigger.
could be a really close finish on this one. Because
Both players are kind of around that. I think they're both 7, aren't they, right now?
no, the Ruby Sapphire I've got on 8 to 1, I think.
8 to 1,
so.
yeah, cool. And that's after the goat.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's currently got, I think, three characters on.
3 on board.
Which means theoretically at some point he can turn all 3 across for possibly law.
Yep.
So it's a stretch. Oh wait, he had a rose in hand, right? No, that was the Elsa.
that was
It
Elsa.
looks
Interesting. If broom doesn't vanish, I'm going to riot. Well, prepare to riot, my friend.
kind of look like rose. So it's like you want to be able to get a little bit more out, and it looks like we're back into the game.
Yes, we are.
And it looks stuff happened. Goat.
So
Broom did not get pushed away.
Okay, now we'll see what the chat has to say about this.
Now he's able to develop your brain.
Yep.
1 cost to develop your brain, gain 1 more.
Yep.
And so we've got a vicious cheetah and a popsicle. And yep, decides for the popsicle just because it doesn't.
I wonder if anyone in the chat will make that comment about the vicious cheater. Not that I say the comment is cheating, but it seems like a lot of people in the chat think that might be the case. Not necessarily cheating, but just rule sharking.
Have the 70 available. Yep, plays the popsicle, so might be looking for a high room or.
Yeah, that was a very good top deck as well. So
Yeah.
just exactly what we need.
Press
Eco
for 2.
for 2.
And yeah, now this is Maui half sharky.
Yeah, so basically after seeing that, I think a lot of people in chat agree there was probably a wrong call. Like, you've got to keep in mind that I don't believe, as far as I'm aware, that Lorcana has an official judge program. So these judges don't really get any official training, not like some of the other games. Like, I know Pokemon has a proper judge program where you have to go to education events and you complete a quiz to become a judge. These people are just giving up their time, might not necessarily know the rules completely inside and out. So, you know, you're probably going to get some incorrect judge calls throughout it. But yeah, it's really disappointing to see, unfortunately. I'm not sure. I haven't had a chat to Jesse. Obviously, you might notice that Jesse is Andy's related. They both have the same last name. So I did play against Andy. I had a brief chat with him about it. I was a little bit, disappointed for him because obviously there's a lot on the line when you get to these top 8 tournament, top 8 games. So, game 3, if Jesse wins here, he will get a golden Mickey, which is worth a sizable amount of money as well. And not to say that if he got to banish the broom, he would have won, but it definitely would have been a different game. And, there's a fair bit of discourse about this. Lots of people in the chat saying that the judges, got the wrong call, which from what I saw would be the case. But again, we don't have all the information. We don't know what the players were saying. But from what he was doing with his hands on the board and from what I could tell the intent, it looked like everything was within reason to banish that broom and draw a card. So, and for a bit of context, Clement was drawing pretty badly, only had a develop your brain in the discard, so was able to get that back and start drawing more cards and work his way back into the game. So this judge call definitely had a huge impact on the game and potentially lost it for Jesse, which is a little bit disappointing. You want to see these games be determined by the merit of the players and not necessarily by rulings that don't really reflect the spirit of the game. So my personal stance on it is that I think we should be looking more at the intent rather than the specific ruling, but in this case I believe it was incorrect anyway. So I think it was clear that Jesse's intent was to play the goat, then banish the broom to draw a card. I think no one can deny that that's what the plan was for him. So, it's a bit disappointing to see the judges rule against him on that one. But unfortunately, it happens, and there were a couple other instances as well. I'll mention another one that I saw on day one. There was a Ruby Sapphire mirror match. Maui Shark challenged into another Maui Shark, I believe. Banished, the opponent put the card, the Maui Half Shark, into the discard pile and went to grab another card out because of the challenge. But unfortunately, because the Maui has been banished, the game state check happened to banish the character. And the game state check happens after the bag resolves, I believe. So I believe that's what the ruling was, but don't quote me on that. So because the Maui Half Shark had entered the discard, then the player wasn't able to grab an action out, even though it was clear that his intent was to grab the action after the Maui Shark. So I think that is, again, a little bit, by the letter of the law, that's probably the correct ruling, but I think we probably need to be looking more at the intent of the players and the spirit of the game. We don't really want our games to be decided by, minute rule infarctions that aren't necessarily reflecting how the game is being played. So I think just a reminder to everyone out there who is playing at these high level tournaments, even at your set champs, to play incredibly clean. And if you are ever unhappy with a ruling, please escalate to the head judge. I'm not sure if Jesse did that in this instance, but if that was me, I would definitely be escalating to the head judge, who, at least then you can get another opinion on it. And then if it's, ruled, unfortunately, you just have to live with it. But I think if you're confident in yourself and the rules, then you should just be calling a judge or a head judge to just confirm the ruling as well. So those were just a couple instances of some less than ideal judge calls, unfortunately. I think on top of that, the judges did do some, good things to help out the tournament. Obviously, they're, there to help make things run smoothly. There were a couple of times that I was quite impressed with what the judges were doing. So one of my friends was playing against a younger kid who was there and sort of running towards the end of time. And one of the judges came over to sort of stand behind them and sort of watch quite intently. Now, sometimes that can be intimidating, but obviously with the age difference and we're all playing in the same division, you just want to make sure there's no coercion or intimidation against younger players to concede. So I think judges were quite aware of that, which was good. Going back to the judge calls, I think there's still quite a bit of up in the air about certain things. Like I've had multiple mixed opinions on certain judge calls. I've had judges say that location law gain is optional. I've heard others say that it's mandatory. So it's a bit confusing when you're getting different messages from different judges. So, and then also, is a flynn trigger mandatory? Is it optional? When do you do it? There's a whole lot of sort of nuances here that I think isn't really beneficial for us to get into, or anyone to get into for that matter. I think what matters is what people's intent is, like what they're trying to do with their turn, rather than are they doing it in the specifically correct order. I would hate to see a world where we start punishing players for not readying their ink before they draw. I think that is something we definitely want to avoid, and it seems like we're on a bit of a slippery slope heading towards that at this stage. So, I hope Ravensburger get a judge program coming soon just to help iron out a few of these things. Again, we're not having a go at any of the judges. They are all giving up their time and doing the best they can and where they see fit. But I think just having a uniform idea of what the rules are and how we're interpreting the rules are important. I think if we're looking for little loopholes in the rules to try and catch players out, that's not really a place where we want to be. I've got one more final thing to bring up before we call it there for the stream. So if you've got any last minute questions, chuck them in the chat or any of your own comments. But I got one from someone who I won't name. They've already reached out to the organisers for the issue that happened, but basically they made day 2 and you get your opponent's deck lists for top 64 and up, so you're able to see what your opponent's playing. It sounded to me like he was feeling quite intimidated by his opponent towards the end of it. He was sort of, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but was sort of being quite cocky and sort of talking a lot of smack to try and throw them off by the sounds of it, was the impression they got. Now, obviously, these things are quite hard to police. It's a lot of he said, she said, and sort of, what you're sort of taking away from what they're saying. So I understand that stuff's really hard to judge, but basically what happened was they were having a look through their list and they sort of thought, oh, there's some, weird tech cards here. I've got to sort of play around them. And then basically didn't see them for the entire game at all, even though they were quite important tech cards to play against his deck. So at the end, he sort of raised this to the judges and they did a deck check and found that they were actually playing the wrong list. So the list they submitted was different to the list they were playing. And again, it's hard to determine whether intent was there or not. But I think, and it also depends on the timing of when this was found. So if this was found sort of at the end of top 64, I think a retrospective match loss wouldn't be unreasonable. You've already gained a huge advantage by giving your opponent misinformation. It's a bit hard to determine the intent from the player on whether they were cheating or not, so I think it's a bit hard to give them a DQ. And we had a similar thing happen in the top 8 of the Pokemon World Championships as well, when a player did something that would cause a match loss. Basically, instead of getting the retrospective match loss where they did it, they got the match loss in the next one. So their opponent, a little bit different because their opponent didn't really gain any advantage, but they still, the next round, they got the match loss or the game loss rather than the round before. So the outcome for this one, I believe, was that they let them continue on in the game. So I think that's reasonable. We're not going to assume anyone's cheating unless we have reasonably good proof, even though there's been some other precedents set. I think having that as the outcome was probably not a bad thing. But I think, depending on when it was found, probably should have been a retrospective match loss. And a few sort of things have been raised by people I've talked to about doing deck checks for people in top 64. Obviously, that's a lot of time and effort to do that many deck checks. So I think it might be a little bit unreasonable to ask that of the tournament staff, given there's only sort of 10 to 15 judges there. Doing 64 deck checks would be quite the challenge. But whether they start after round 9 when people start IDing and hold on to the decks is another option. But then you've got all sorts of liability issues. So it's quite a difficult thing to get around. But I think definitely at least going into top 8 deck checks are an important thing to be doing. I'm not sure if they did. I imagine they would have done some amount of deck checks. But yeah, understandably, they're quite upset that their opponent got this advantage over them. Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate to see. Yeah, they did get us there at 8 for a 9:30 start. They did some deck checks. There weren't too many staff there. Obviously, at 9 o'clock, they have other people to organise, and they have to organise all of the competitive constructed as well. So there's a lot of things to do. But yeah, I think ideally we would like everyone to be deck checked going into top 64 just to make it fair for everyone. But I think it can be a little bit unrealistic given the amount of judges that they had to get everyone a deck check beforehand. Maybe if they started the day before, once people were IDing and kept the decks overnight so people couldn't change them, that would be a suitable alternative. But I think, yeah, it's pretty hard to get a deck check for everyone. But unfortunately, that person could have won. It's hard to say if, they played differently around different cards that they actually were in their deck, that they might have won the game. So, but I think depending on when it was found, I think if it was before the start of the next round, I think a retrospective match loss should have been given. I think the amount of advantage you gain by your opponent playing around cards that aren't in your deck is too big to just let go. They did get a game lost in the next round. I don't know if they won the round, but I think at that stage, possibly a match loss is warranted. It's a little bit different in closed deck lists because you're just playing around every possible option. So you're not really gaining that much of an advantage. But I think in open deck lists, the advantage is quite significant. So probably should have been a harsher penalty than just a game loss regardless. But again, that comes back to not having a judge program and having some sort of more inexperienced judges not around the rules. But yeah, I think overall the tournament ran very well. Obviously, you mentioned starting at 9:30 for an 8 a.m. be there. That was a little bit disappointing, but obviously they have to print out all the deck lists for all of the players, figure out who's what seed, organise the deck list. So it's a bit of work, and there's really only 3 people doing it. So you can understand there. But I think another thing with the deck list that was a little bit disappointing was the casters not having access to the deck list. I feel like that was probably an easy fix. It looked like some of the stream games that were chosen were a little bit rushed sometimes, so that can make it a little bit difficult to get a hold of the deck list as you need in a timely manner. So I think that's sort of one issue. But I think once you get into the top 64 where the players have the deck list as well, it's pretty easy just to get a photocopy to the casters just so they know a bit about what's in the list rather than just guessing a lot of the time. So I think that's probably something that hopefully changes for the next tournament. And I think, yeah, maybe we'll even go away from paper deck lists as we move to a new sort of melee style client with card.io and Ravensburger. So hopefully they allow for some sort of electronic deck list submission on there, and then we can submit our deck list, and then when you're up against your opponent in top 64, you're able to view your list on your phone. That comes with a little bit of issues like people looking up other things on their phone, but I think as long as both players can see each other's phones, then that's not really an issue as well. So a few people sort of left with a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth with some of the judge calls, unfortunately. But again, we don't have all the information, and these things are bound to happen at every tournament. We've seen at most of the tournaments already happening in America and Europe that similar things are happening where judge calls aren't necessarily going in players' favors for whatever reason, and can be quite difficult to handle, especially when there's so much on the line. Thousands and thousands worth of compensation for doing well at these tournaments. And, I think a few things to take away from this tournament is that we really, as a community, shouldn't be bashing on people at all, really. I think there's a lot of hate towards the judges, there's a lot of hate towards the casters and the players on stream, and it's just not really warranted. Sure, we can talk about players and what could have been done better. I think that's fine, but, calling people bad players for some small mistakes they made, I don't think we should be continuing allowing, and should definitely be calling out people. So from what I have seen, the ruling was basically, Spider Jess, that the broom could not be banished. I'm not sure how they arrived at that ruling. I imagine there was maybe some miscommunication about playing the goat and gaining the law means you've completed playing the card. So since the card has been played and it has been resolved, you are no longer able to banish the broom. I imagine that's where the line of thinking was. But in actual fact, I believe that what happens is that the goat is played, both triggers automatically enter the bag, that being gaining the law from the goat and the broom being able to be banished. Then you can choose which order to complete them in. And until you start your next action or say no trigger, you can do either. I would like to get to a stage where everyone is saying no trigger when they complete something, and that way either saying no trigger or going into the next action is what is deciding whether you are skipping that trigger or not. Unfortunately here, I don't believe Jesse did either of those things, but the judge did rule against him. Yeah, exactly. And I think, if you play the game, you play on stream, you're going to put down the law first, because what if you banish and you draw and you sort of start thinking about what you're going to do next? You're just going to forget. And I think that comes into it as well. So, a bit disappointed to see this for Jesse. Obviously, he was doing very well. Hard to say whether he would have won or not, but it is, it is a bit disappointing to see, as it definitely changed his run and probably, left a real sour taste in his mouth after the tournament. So, I hope he keeps playing because, obviously a fantastic player, and I didn't speak to him too much, just sort of briefly, but I was having a chat with his brother and he was a really nice guy. So I really hope they keep playing and this doesn't sort of deter them from coming back to these tournaments. But, if something like this happened to a newer player, I wouldn't be surprised if they just stop playing altogether. So I think it can be really damaging for the brand, for players coming back. And, it sort of just all trickles down. If people aren't playing as much, not going to get as much money in, so not going to have as big and as good prizing support for the tournament. So, and the same goes back to people in chat, just sort of slamming some of the players on stream. If they're newer players and they go back and watch it, they're probably not going to come back and play the game again. So, I know, and it does happen. And I think, we're not going to be blaming anyone for what happened. I'm sure no one is intentionally trying to, stitch Jesse out of doing well at the tournament. but I think it just comes back to definitely needing more of a systematic judge system where people sort of are aware of the rules and can make correct rulings so that everything's fair between the players. And I think one other thing that was a little bit of a miss by the judges was that in day 2, they definitely rectified this, talking about how you're able to appeal judge decisions to the head judge. But I don't believe that was mentioned at all in day 1. So I think for a lot of players, especially being Disney, they've come over just for the IP and not necessarily playing some of these competitive tournaments before, wouldn't know that's a thing. So I think that was definitely an important thing that needed to be made aware to all the players. If that you get a judge ruling that you're not sure about or that you're not happy with, that you can appeal. And I think the head judge, I can't remember who it was, or the assistant head judge, they were definitely quite knowledgeable. So I imagine they would be a good point of call to sort of get these decisions ironed out. And again, I'm not sure if Jesse did call the head judge. I imagine that probably would have come into it, as they were sort of cut to the casters for quite a while. And I imagine they had some extensive discussions about that. So, yeah, and I think Twitch chat obviously agrees with that the judging decision was probably wrong. But again, we don't have all the information. We don't know what sort of verbal cues there were as well. So, unfortunately, it didn't go in Jesse's favour. But again, we're not going to be talking down on anyone, but just sort of figuring out where we can improve as a community and make sure that the games are sort of more fair. I'll just quickly play it forward just to sort of see. I don't think they talk any more about it from the casters, but
Can play the Elsa, but it will only bump in for 2, and now we have the 5 will.
yeah. So basically, here you say Jesse must have said pass turn or something after playing goat. I imagine that's maybe what happened, but it didn't look like he said anything from the face cam. So it's hard to say that's what happened, but again, we don't have all the information. So. And, like band judges calling people scummy, like I don't think that's appropriate ever. So unfortunately, some not great shows of character from the chat there, unfortunately. But I think hopefully it won't diminish the fact that the first tournament in Australia for Disney was a very good success, I would say. Ran very well. Side events were fantastically structured. Most of the people I talked to had a fantastic time as well. And, I got to meet some super cool and fun. I wasn't sure if comms made a difference. Yeah, I think that definitely comes into it. So they did say that your verbal will sort of come into it more than the physical. But if we go back to just beforehand, we can have a look, and if you look at Jesse's face, just to see if he says anything. So he's just about to play the goat here, I imagine, after inking. So we'll try and see if he says anything. Yeah, so gain 1 more. Pop room, yeah, okay. So I think I agree with you, Nico Tinks, that I can't say anything verbally or physically that would make this rule incorrect. So again, it's like hard to say for us, but I'm pretty sure it's just an incorrect ruling, unfortunately. He says gain 1 law, pop room. Yeah. I'm sure this clip's going to be everywhere, and unfortunately, I didn't watch the rest of the stream, so I don't know if there was any other judge calls that probably weren't correct, but I think this one's definitely the biggest. And in game 3 of a top 8 going into top 4 is a bit disappointing to have that as the final outcome. I think that's probably enough going on about the negativity now. I think tournament overall was, I had a blast at least, and I hope everyone else that went did. We're still in the middle of our set champs at the moment, so we've got another 2 weeks of set champs. I'm going to be streaming the Aussie collectibles and not sure about the Sunday one yet. We'll have to figure that out and see where we can go. But I've still got some of the Greensboro footage to upload over on YouTube at Mr. Darcy TCG. So feel free to go check that out. It's got some more games. more footage of Fabian and Clement as well. So yeah, I'm glad someone thought it was a great tournament, because I think the chat in Twitch thought that it was a bit average. So I'm glad someone enjoyed watching it. But yeah, I would love to go watch it back. I think it's on my free time. I'll try and like watch some more of the games back, because they definitely would be cool games to watch. Glad I got to watch mine back though, and definitely learned a lot as well. So yeah, I'll be uploading more footage to YouTube from the Greensboro Set Champs, and going to be streaming some more over the weekend as well. I was thinking about maybe making a video with the player whose opponent had the incorrect deck list, but it might just be a bit more negativity we don't really need in the community. But yeah, I'll definitely be uploading every day at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So be sure to watch some of those videos. Leave a comment, let me know if there's anything that I could do differently with the videos that you'd like to see. I try and reply to all the comments as well. Unfortunately, it's just a bit hard getting deck lists from the set champs as well. But now that the DLC is over, hopefully people will be a bit more receptive to leaving their deck lists as public, so I can post them for you guys as well. Let me just choose someone to raid, and yeah, next time I'll be streaming will be on the weekend most likely, but keep an eye out for the YouTube content as well. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Just leave some comments on how you found the tournament, what were some of your highlights, and please, everyone, no bashing anyone. We don't need any more negativity. Thanks for tuning in, Spy Jess. Appreciate it. Hopefully that cleared up some of the things that happened at the tournament. And, I think overall for the first one, great success. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you on the weekend at Saturday. I'm not sure what time it starts, but I'll put up a schedule shortly, and keep an eye out for the content. All right, let's choose who we're going to raid. I've got a couple of Pokemon streamers. I don't think there's many Disney ones at the moment. Let me see. We'll just go here, the Pokemon one. All right, thanks guys.